whatever. We can talk. I mean, there's plenty of things to talk about with Scorsese. I mean, I think that's the
Yeah.
one we're most versed on anyway. So
Yeah, well, yeah, the main, well, yeah, yeah, pretty much. I think the main thing was sort of like the list, the list of his films, and then whatever, just the anniversaries and the and old boy too, and old boy and the American boy, and the
Steven Press. Oh
yeah,
yeah, he's a
yeah,
wild dude. And to see that, and
yeah.
him still being alive is a miracle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a great piece. The New Yorker. Yeah.
Well, yeah, living being a 72-year-old with a 2-year-old baby.
Somebody, yeah, somebody got to bring him together with Scorsese today, man, and see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm just you had that friend who was crazy, who's a crazy bastard back in the day. You want us like, nigga, you still alive? You still alive? Like I didn't
Yeah,
expect you. Like I thought you was dead.
yeah.
He's like he's kind of like
I'm
white,
sure you've been dead
like
by now.
like white Omar, and
What?
you see,
White Omar.
he's like, I'm surprised you still alive.
Uh, yeah, that's just a little taste or so. We'll bring that back up later, but
Yeah,
yeah, this in the building episode 15. Our first one I think we've done on Thursday. We just we pushed it back some. Probably would have done this a little earlier if not for some technical issues I had last week, and just some whatever stuff this week. But just wanted to get this in before some of the other stuff I got planned for next week, and it's kind of starting the wrap up at the end of the year. Looking back on this crazy year, uh, and but with this show, it's sort of for me. I was thinking about it like, I like that we get our guests on and stuff, and that we do, that we've been doing the things that we're doing, but we really haven't had a show yet where it was like just you and me talking for the whole thing. And like just sort of, I think this show might more reflect like a lot of our typical conversations that we've had, especially about certain things that we sort of bond on routinely. And I think film is one of those things that we sort of easily bond on and talk about. And it makes me think too about the Oscar video we did like a few years back. Like that, you can see that on YouTube. It's actually I think it's on the Demands' page or something. He didn't. I think we actually did have a war account at that point, but we wasn't using it. But we did that video. That was pretty fun. But I think what we're doing now is a little better as far as the quality overall. But we it was a start, and I think it showed reflected again our shared knowledge and passion or whatever for film. So with this episode right here, what we doing is just and on another thing too, I think that if you could look up that we've done is that discussion that we had on Singleton right after he died.
right.
I sort of paired that randomly with other stuff, a couple other segments that I did around that time, and put it out as a like a pop culture podcast thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that too. I like doing that, and like I said, it's different. There's been different directors and people that we bonded over throughout the years, And I think a couple that we plan on talking about in this episode is Francis Ford Coppola, who is someone we haven't actually talked a lot about, but
Mm.
it's a couple interesting things that's popped up with him recently that I wanted to get into, and also Steve McQueen, who is a director of very much specific interests for us, being that he's a black director who's emerged in recent years, and he's made these important works, but he seems to be doing something different now with this series that he's doing on Amazon called Small Acts, and it's sort of reflecting more of his British African heritage, and Dave has actually seen it. He's going to hip us to it. So we gonna probably use that to get into a little bit of a discussion of him too overall and his work. And I think the last thing we're gonna do is talk about one of the guys who I think I said on our last show, outside of Spike, he's probably like the guy that we talk about most in regards to directors, and that's Martin Scorsese. And like Scorsese is sort of a certain relevance that's always there with him, but this year was interesting for me because several of his movies had big anniversaries this year, and we can go into that. But I also also came across this list of this writer did on basically listing his best movies from 1 to 25. He's done 25 feature length films, but beyond that, I also in thinking of that and thinking of his filmography, I came across a video of the Safdie brothers who directed Uncut Gems. They were talking with another director. I believe it was the director of that movie Hereditary. Uh, but they had a video on YouTube where they were talking about Scorsese's short films that he did as a young director, going back to his student directing as a student, and his early career and going into the 70s. Like he's done some particularly interesting short films. The one that we're going to center on is a study, not even a study, but just a night of him interviewing a guy named
Stephen Prince.
Prince, yeah. And
And
Stephen Prince is one of the most interesting, uh, you know, really out there characters you could think of. A real life character who actually played in a couple of Scorsese movies as well, small parts, and he acted in a few other movies too in the 70s. But he was just a real Rolling Stone character who was, we'll get into his story too as we talk about that part of Scorsese. And there's a few things particularly with Scorsese that was sort of in looking at this stuff, it was sort of revelatory to me because it was like just thinking about this sort of edge that he walked on at that point, and it's sort of I'll explain it more when we get to it, but it's just like it made me think of him in a different way than I thought of him ever before. But before we get to this what I'm calling the auteur talk, I want to I wanted to bring up something that we put on weareregalradio.com yesterday. Our one-time co-host Damon Spruill put up a nice piece. He felt compelled to speak on this whole thing that's going on with HBO Max and the streaming services that are emerging on, in basically providing all this new, like Dave, you said it, quite a bit in recent weeks. Like, where would we be without Netflix? in this whole you know this whole time of COVID and everything. But you add on to Netflix, you have Disney Plus now, you have HBO Max, like we said, you have Hulu, you have Peacock, NBC has one now. Like all these individual uh, movie producing, movie studios and TV studios and stuff. All these conglomerates seem to all have their own streaming. If they haven't already established a streaming source, they got one plan, and it's like it's a lot, and it gives you a lot of options. But now they're competing with each other, and they're also getting in on the movie thing, because the movie industry as we know it has just come to a halt because of COVID, and people not being able to gather more than a dozen or so in any place really in the United States right now. So that's pretty much shut down the movie theater industry. But at the same time, movies and these movie studios, they've got products that they want to get out there. And there have been movies that have been from throughout the time of the shutdown, going back to March. There have been big movies that have been either pushed back into 2021 and beyond, or you've had other movies that were fully planned on being released in theaters, but the people behind them were like, look, we just got to get them out. We put them out on streaming, and they've been exclusively on the streaming service. Now the one outlier with that has been Tenet, the Christopher Nolan movie with John David Washington. Christopher Nolan has been so adamant about his movies being seen in the big screen, and the way that he expects them to be seen. The way that he creates them to be seen is on big screens and everything in the multiplexes. And he's like, we gotta get it out. So they put out Tenet, and it didn't really do well, not in North America. It's made like almost $400 million throughout the world, because other areas have dealt better with COVID, and they've been able to, I guess, allow more people to go and be at and gather in places like theaters and stuff. But in America, it hasn't been the case. It's been very much, I guess there's been a lot of places where it's been open. Tenet has been open and you've been able to see it, but people still have been like, no, I'm not going out, and I'm not going out to see a film. I'm not risking my health for that. And it didn't make very much money here in America. It's actually about to be released on on streaming and stuff, as it would have been regularly. But now what we're having with HBO Max now is the big announcement was them simultaneously releasing their films on the Max platform and at theaters. So you have the option of going to the show, starting with this Wonder Woman movie that's coming out on the 25th. You got the option to go to the show to see it, or you could just see it at home. Now, of course, because of that, a lot of the theater houses are like, what's up? That goes against everything that we built our industry on. People have the option to just sit home and watch, this movie that is already going to be promised to them because they've subscribed to the streaming service. They don't have to pay extra money. They don't have to pay the money that they would pay to us. They don't have to pay for the concessions that we overprice on. They don't have to, that they everything is upcharged at the movie theater, and that's how they get their bread. So, but you cut all that off at the knees when people have that option to just sit home and watch the movie when they want to. They can pause it when they want to if they got to take a pee. They don't have to miss anything if they got to pee, or if their kids if their kids are wild, they got to corral the kids and say put them to bed. They could park. It's everything is at their control. And going back to the piece that D wrote, that's pretty much his argument about it. It's like with as people are going to get used to having this experience, not only for low budget movies that people that studios just released and they know that's not going to make any money. These are the biggest movies of next year that's going to be released, and in the case of Warner Brothers, all of them. So all of their movies, and they're going to release some of the biggest movies next year: The Matrix 4, Godzilla versus King Kong, the Wonder Woman movie, like we said, this big new remake of Doom. Like, they're making big movies, and these are movies that the film industry would in a normal year would rely on to help help fund the industry. Make hundreds of millions of dollars in America alone, and that's not going to be the case now. If it is, they'll be lucky if they get a fraction of what they would normally get, the industry as a whole. Meanwhile, Warner Brothers itself could set itself up, through its, through its partners with HBO. They're all under this Warner Media umbrella now. So Warner Media could stand to make more money because everything, because they're talking about getting more subscribers to HBO Max, and that's everything that goes into that. That's their profit. That's going directly to them. They don't have to share that with any exhibitors like AMC theaters or Regal theaters or whatever. So it's the authority issue, and at the heart of it, like D says in his piece, it's about how do people really want to see the movies? Do people feel obligated to hold up the movie industry as it's been ran? And do people really want to see movies at the theater anymore in an environment where you can't really go outside without having a mask on your face? So
Yeah, I think I mean I think the problem is with the movie theater industry is that it's kind of like most industries right now that where that depend on public attendance, right?
yeah,
And especially the movie theater industry. I think ultimately the issue at hand is that they haven't been able to figure out solutions to safely have people back. I mean, the way movie theaters are constructed, it doesn't allow you to be separated from the person who's sitting next to you. So it's a high potential for COVID, for you to be, I guess to, I guess be exposed to COVID. And I think that tends to be the challenge. I mean, it's the challenge that, restaurants are going through.
yeah.
Just, and, I guess the benefit of restaurants is that depending on where you're at, you can have outdoor dining. Case in point, one of my favorite restaurants in Chicago, Fogo, called me, and you can kind of tell where there's been a paradigm shift when a restaurant you normally go to calls you to invite you back,
Oh yeah.
and because that never happens. I mean, I've spent hundreds, if not probably over $1,000, eating at Fogo over the years,
Yeah.
and ultimately they've
Fogo,
never called me to
Fogo
say,
has
hey,
no problem getting people booked there. Yeah.
traditionally, right. So they called me to say, hey, what, we have heated outdoor dining. This is the one in Chicago. We have heated outdoor dining, and then also to further incentivize you, if you come, we're going to offer you a discount on your meal.
Mm.
That normally does. I mean, like, those things don't happen. LA Fitness, another example. I used to go to LA Fitness. LA Fitness constantly email me, say, hey, come back, it's safe. It's really been a challenge for industries that require you to be on the inside to be able to survive in this environment, and they haven't been able to figure out ways to safely make sure that people are distanced. And I think that's really part of the challenge. I mean,
Yeah.
from the collateral damage for the physical film movie houses is the people who have to pay a mortgage on it, the people who are employed by them, the people who used to work who worked at in the concessions, who took tickets. Those are the people that who really are the collateral damage in this
Yeah,
thing. And the reality of it is, if you don't work in those industries, if you're not the person who's taking out a mortgage for the space, the owner of the movie house, you really, yeah, of course, you're going to be detached from it. Is it more convenient if I have the opportunity to? I mean, it's essentially in a lot of cases, a lot of the Warner and a lot of the companies have done what bootleggers have been done for a long time. They're giving you the product direct at home, or give you the option to watch the product direct at home. I mean, people who always, historically, people, get screener copies, bootleg them, share them with people, or they get movies on Fire Stick,
right.
share, selling to people. So it's really just they've taken that control and they've placed it for you to have it at home, I guess legally, and not have to watch it from the comfort of your own home, to have a authorized copy. So I think, yeah, in this environment, it's going to be an attractive option for most people. If I can pay a subscription fee, watch all the movies I want at home, versus going to a movie, making a capital investment of time, money for parking, money for the ticket, money for concessions,
Yeah,
the logistics that have to go around managing children when you bring them to the movie theater. If I can X all that out, yeah, of course I'm going to stay at home. And I think that's really the part of the challenge for those who work for the movie theaters, and who own them, is being able to figure out what alternative solutions can they use for that space, or how, because it's not going to be its traditional space, so they have to figure out a different way to use that space. I think the only exception to where like a traditional movie theaters are dying, but drive-in theaters, especially here, are thriving again. People
yeah,
are paying up to $25 a pop to be able to see old movies. They're not even first run movies. Old
right.
movies, at the drive-in and driving significant distances to do so. And a part of that is, the benefit. While it's a benefit to be able to stay in your home and watch first-rate movies in the convenience at home, the other challenge of it is that being at home so long, sometimes you just want to get out. Amazon did some free movie showings and tandem with Michael B. Jordan this summer, and the amount of people that came out for it was crazy. And I personally think that even if it wasn't like free, Amazon wasn't footing the bill for it, people would have still came out and would have still been, what went to go see those movies, just because people want to get out of the house. I mean, so I think if there's any opportunity in this environment, and especially I know in Chicago, a lot of the Chicagoland area, a lot of the drive-ins did. I'd probably be trying to do that. I would try to create some drive-in theaters, because that's a way to make some cash, because people want to get out the house. I mean, even it's cold outside, you can't, crank open the windows and, sit on your roof and all those things. I think that people still want an opportunity to be able to have a safe outdoor experience, and that's what, at least here, drive-ins have been able to provide people. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
California, given the climate and out there, typically, I'm sure that helps. That helps with drive-in theaters a lot. We know it's a little different here in Chicago, but over the summer, I know I have seen, if not not regular uh, drive-in theaters, like there've been like events that have recurring events that have happened, some promotions and stuff. I think uh, through the music box theater has been involved with some of these where they've had drive-in film events.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's definitely a way to go. But going back to where you started with that, I think it's interesting to me how this fighting and this back and forth has gone on with the movie theaters and the movie studio. Like the movie theaters, I think have shown a little bit more of a you know like they just had they haven't. been proactive really in trying to get around these issues, and like in the way that the you mentioned the restaurants have been like they've really been trying to come about with some sort of uh, technology or ingenuity in some way in finding ways to allow people to dine while having some sort of space or dine outside, as opposed to inside. And they've shown some, resolve. They've shown some reserve in that way. Not reserve. They shown some industriousness. I should say
Right. Yeah.
in trying to find answers. Well, I haven't seen that so much in what I've read and about the theaters. Like we haven't really seen any you know plans or any sort of any theorizing in general about how they can better better equip themselves in this environment today and allow people to you know maybe to get around the issues that they may have in gathering at these theaters. They just been bitching at the studios more or less about when they're releasing their films and saying like, well, you can't do this because this isn't the way that it's been done and it's hurting our business. Well, what are y'all doing
What
to
safeguards? What safety
yeah,
precautions or safeguards are you putting in
yeah,
place?
what are y'all doing?
Yeah. I'm just trying to think like logistically, what can you do? I mean, the way most movie houses are made. I
Yeah,
mean, with the exception of like the more modern ones where they're the captain chairs and things like that, you can
yeah,
maybe establish some type of partitions there, right?
yeah. I would think with a lot of modern ones, yeah, you can.
Between
And maybe think Dave may have paused there. Hope he joins back. But yeah, that's one thing right there. With a lot of, I think some of y'all, if
what
it got some issue with you, Dave, but I think the idea of partitions is possible with some more modern theaters. Some of these theaters where you have the servings, the food servings and stuff. That's calls for more space to be had anyway because you're serving food and you're having. Dave dropped for a second. There we'll see he come back hopefully in a minute here, but you know all the food servings and all this stuff that uh, people, the extra recline and the almost bed like seating that you have in some of these theaters now. That's calls for more space naturally. Uh, okay, and they back and with I was just saying like with some of these, definitely with some of these newer theaters where you have like the full services and the food services or you have like almost the extra recline seating or almost the bed like seating in some of these places like that's caused for more space to be provided naturally between consumers at the theaters anyway. So that's something you could possibly build off of in regards to it'll definitely I would expect cut down on uh, the amount of revenue that you get for each screening, and like you mentioned, that's part of the game. Is in these type of industries, restaurants, theaters, and stuff. Is not only getting people in, is getting as many people in as you can, and
right.
and in theaters, yeah, you want. That's why we've got these stadium seatings and everything now because they want to get thousands of people potentially in these theaters at any given time, and that ups the revenue for both the movie houses and the studios because they get their piece of every ticket sale. So but I say it's better to have a fraction of of less of something than
Nothing at all.
nothing at all. So
Right.
again, I just think, I feel bad for the movie exhibitioners, in that industry. But like I said, I just don't think they've shown enough, uh, flex, or enough ingenuity
Yeah.
to, to really be that sympathetic a figure here. And you know, I just think that you gotta make do with what you got. You got to do something different in this time. You can't just roll it out and be like, well, eventually things will get better. You got to be a little bit more proactive.
No, no, agreed. I mean, yeah, especially when people's jobs are on the line, and then
Yeah,
one.
it's
I
so
mean,
yeah.
yeah,
You
and you,
mentioned too, like so much of it is about those those middle and working class people who are fueling these places, these restaurants and and things. The people who, not the CEOs and stuff, but like say the people, the 9 to 5 people, is providing them a place to work and provide money for themselves. So that's why I think so many of these restaurants and stuff try to keep themselves open, even in the face of you know, going against certain uh, laws, not laws, but edicts and stuff that are being put on the by local governments. Some of these places keep themselves open, restaurants and stuff in particular, because they feel that they got to keep themselves open to provide for themselves, the owners. They got bills that they got to pay, and of course their employees got
we,
bills that they got to pay.
right. I mean, from a business standpoint, if you own a space, most likely you have debt service on it. You have a mortgage you have to pay. If you're leasing a space, you have a lease agreement that you have to fulfill, and a lot of people are using, that to kind of break their lease. COVID is kind of the skirt their lease. But if you own it or you have a mortgage on this place, you don't have that same flexibility. In any particular case, there's still the collateral, the people collateral aspect of it, where you still
Yeah,
have employees that you have to pay. And, Marvin, our common, friend Marvin pointed out something very important is that, one of the things the restaurant industry doesn't do is that they don't have to pay into unemployment for their employees in the restaurant industry because
oh really?
they're tip based, yeah, because they're tip based workers, because most of their income is made by tip. So they don't
Oh,
have to pay
yeah.
in unemployment. So that puts them also at a significant disadvantage. So
I didn't know that.
yeah. So, it's something that yeah, so it's really something, it's really a precarious place to be in, being, someone in the restaurant industry. It's,
Sure,
especially if you're not an operator. Um,
sure.
yeah, and I think really, but like I said, COVID is hitting pretty much, office, retail, restaurants. They're all everyone's getting hit bad. I mean, there's only like a couple businesses that are thriving in a COVID environment. There's industrial space, warehouses, of course, because of the Amazon effect, and then you got, of course, marijuana dispensaries that are thriving. But
Yeah,
those are the really two, those are the really two that are doing well. So, if you're not in,
I
weed or
just yeah,
or the or the in the industrial space, yeah, I think it's been a challenging time for everyone.
no doubt, man, no doubt. You mentioned marijuana. I said I reached out. I saw something about, on the forum that I'm on about they got a cannabis dispensary operations courses now at Olive Harvey that they trying to put some people off to the game. I guess given that particular school, they're trying to get more people of color involved in the industry.
Oh yeah, I mean it should be. I mean historically the people who have bear the brunt of the unjust drug sentencing
Yeah,
laws. So we should. You got people who've been in jail, for probably not. I don't know if it's for marijuana as much, but of course we know crack cocaine, crack sentencing for decades in many cases. And so yeah, if you've been locked up for weed, you should definitely be one of the beneficiaries of it now that it's legal.
yeah. That should be like a formal program, something
Mm.
like that allow people who have been locked up for those crime for marijuana related crimes be able to uh, legalize themselves. Get themselves involved in the legalized programs and
Th-
stuff. That
there's a program in Chicago that does it. I forgot the name of it. I have to because I was somewhere. I was at an event and they were presenting. But there's a program that does that tries to incorporate ex felons into the cannabis industry, being able to be involved in the cannabis industry. I'll have
oh,
to
okay. I'd look
yeah.
into that. Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, but there's definitely a lot of work to be done for there to actually be some type of parity for minorities in the space.
that, definitely.
Mhm.
Just to get back to where we were at with the films and the film house. I just say I put the link up for these story. I of course recommend y'all to visit that on the site. But before we go with that, I'll just say it's a little bit presumptive. I love these piece, but I think it's a little bit presumptive to say that this the end of movie theaters. It's probably the end of movie theaters as we know it. But I think there's still, like you say, Dave. There's always going to be that need for people to get out, and you know, maybe we'll see a real resurgence with drive-ins and stuff like that. But I think once we get the vaccine, and that seems to be coming about pretty well at this point. Vaccine pumping, and people feel people just need just to have that comfort again and going out
Well,
and not being
there's
like,
right.
yeah, they just need a reason, and I think maybe by this time next year, I would think, or in a year and a half, it'll probably be pretty much where we were back to, before March, if not, not exactly, but
of,
it'll
of
be,
2022.
yeah. I say a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we probably be back to that sort of regularity where you may see people going out who have masks on, and just it's just a regular. It's not weird or anything anymore. But I think if people can go out and not fear death or fear just the rapid you know decline that comes with a COVID, being exposed to COVID that can be there, if they don't
Uh,
fear that, I think they'll go back to the movies,
uh,
like and the theater and the movie, producers and stuff. They're gonna know how to maximize their profits out of these films, especially if they want to make 200 $300 million budget films. They're going to try to maximize, their profits out of these films. And yeah, I don't think you at the point now you can't maximize your profit from these films by streaming them and having them be a part of a regular, $9 or $10 exchange with people monthly. You gotta get them to come out and spend each
well,
time they come out to see your movies.
yeah. I mean, I think that ultimately I think that what's going to end up happening is that there's going to the movie theaters will make their resurgence. Well, to your point, it's going to be a year, or at least a year. But the issue with it being a year is the collateral damage that occurs in the interim. I mean, ultimately, you can't go a year plus traditionally without paying to what I mentioned before, your debt service or your lease agreement. With the space. I mean, the space costs Warner Brothers they're not financing the cost of these buildings. So, it's not like they're the ones who are on the hook for it. The ones that are hook for it are the people who own the movie houses. And if they don't have income coming in to pay their debt obligations, now eventually they'll end up becoming foreclosed on. And unless to your until like you mentioned before, unless they find some ingenious way to be able to, create a space for them. And what the movie industry looks like in a year may be vastly different, because the truth is, with COVID, I think a lot of people are going to be psychologically scarred, even when there becomes, a widely, vaccine. The reality of it is everyone going to take the vaccine? The answer is no. Is there going to be enough people to take the vaccine for it to work? The answer is we don't know yet, because it hasn't been presented. And I think that, with that being said, is that it's going to create fear amongst a lot of people. And to your point, the people who tend to be the most health sensitive, it's going to create fear for them. And I mean, even the bad thing about COVID is that even if it doesn't affect you adversely, I mean, some people are asymptomatic. Like, it affects it affects certain people based upon certain things differently. So if you're young, I mean, part of the reason why I'm working from home, the people that I work with, and probably myself included, we're not the people who are going to be the most damaged by COVID.
Mm.
But the thing is, if we're asymptomatic and we carry it to someone, if we have a loved one who, is susceptible to the damaging effect of COVID, if they're older, if they have pre-existing health conditions, pregnant, whatever the scenario is, we know we can transfer it to them. Well, you should know if you can transfer it to them. So that
Yeah.
also changes the way you move. So even if I know that COVID won't kill me, or that I'm confident that COVID won't kill me, or that it won't, maybe not even kill me, that it won't, do me significant harm, then, I know, even with that knowledge or that comfort, so to speak, I know that I still can't operate this. I still have to operate with caution. And I think that tends to be what's going to be the challenge, is getting people back into those spaces, is that even if they know that they're asymptomatic or whatever the situation may be, they may, if they have a loved one who, is susceptible to it, they're going to be cautious in how they move. I know, at least I will be. Am I going into a movie theater? Probably not. Will I go to a drive-in? Sure. I mean, if unless they start doing movies out of, like, stadiums, I don't know, in an outdoor space, I know that
So
probably would be, yeah.
this hasn't been, because if this was established, there, it'd been a game changer already. But I think there have been talk about filtration systems and stuff like air filtration and certain things, because there's, people have spoke about the fact that on airplanes there's not much of an issue because of the air filtration that goes on in airplanes. I'm not sure exactly about it, but I know there has been, like with airplanes, there hasn't been the thought of spreading within airplanes. You want to get people cleared for once they get on the plane, before they get on. But once you're on it, it's like that's not an issue apparently. I
Mm.
no hold me to that, but
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, but I think it's something to do with the air, with like the circulation and stuff on airplanes that's
Well,
needed on airplanes. But
right.
anyway, what I was gonna say though is that that, I mean, that's something that could be, I think there has been some talk about trying to mine that source of technology for places like restaurants and indoor places, indoor gathering areas. I don't know if it would ever get to that point where it would affect things and currently, but it's something to think about, I guess. But
Well, I don't know. Maybe it may create some opportunity for some of these businesses to start operating, with a higher occupancy number. I mean,
yeah,
that's still left to
yeah,
be
just
seen.
like I said, just show some sort of innovation. I think it would be nice if some sort of innovation in general occurs from this, but uh, you know, I think one thing that you're gonna see though with the movie exhibition industry is that some companies are just gonna die, and some some companies gonna get swallowed up by other ones. Like I know the uh, Regal theaters. There's been some. They've had some headlines earlier in the year where they were talking, mass closings and stuff like that, and that may be a company that gets swallowed up by another company or something like that, or you
Mm.
know, but I. I'm some. Well, another thing that I just thought of on my own too is that you know, because this may be risky for them because it's not a cost that they have to take on currently. So why would you really take it on? But the idea of movie producers or movie conglomerates, entertainment conglomerates getting getting stakes into the exhibition side of things.
What do you mean? What do you mean, like buying, what, investing in, in cinema houses?
Yeah,
I,
and
I yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is for them is right now is that one, you don't as somebody who sells real estate, you really getting into something unless you planning on repurposing the space for unless you're planning on repurposing the space, I think for something that's viable, then I don't foresee that occurring. I mean, unless you just are have a nostalgic um, attraction or appreciation for it or intention for it.
well, you
Um,
may have one or the other because
yeah.
or you may have more of a nostalgic thing if you have an investment from specific artists or maybe a group of artists or something because they may be more like the Christopher Nolans of the world who are like we got to keep alive the element of movie theaters and stuff like that and that sort of presence of seeing movies on the big screen.
Mm,
But for conglomerates and large companies like a Warner Media or something like that, I would think that repurposing the spaces, like you say, would be part of the game
well,
naturally because they're
we
going again
yeah.
their business is about maximizing profit. So
Well, well, yeah, but they don't. But the thing is, they don't own in many cases, they don't own the physical movie theaters. So the issue at
yeah,
hand,
that's why I said before, like that's what makes it risky because it's taking on a risk that they didn't have before. But I'm
yeah.
saying that you also have a level of control that comes in with that, whereas like you know if something happens in the future to this degree, you can still you don't really have to answer to nobody in regards to how you release things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't personally see them investing, saving movie houses. I don't. I mean, it's not. I think. I mean, it's. I think it's kind of. I'm trying to figure out a good analogy for it, but I don't really see them saving movie houses. I mean, unless it's like somebody decides to do on their own personal investment. I mean, I think what I've been seeing in the kind of in the real estate space where people have been saving or repurposing spaces is really been like dead retail. So you've been seeing like retail, like malls being repurposed as like Amazon's fulfillment centers.
Mm-hmm.
Or I was talking to somebody the other day who's the real estate investor and developer based in Oakland, and she was telling me we took an old Woolworths and we're going to repurpose it to create multifamily housing. And which to me, I thought, wow, that's a great purpose. And I mean, there's guys in Chicago, there's developers in Chicago who are socially, I guess, conscious, who tend to do things like take old banks and do kind of same thing, try to create some new purpose and life for it. But outside of that, I don't see anyone coming in to save movie theaters, non-performing movie theaters, unless they have a viable, financially viable repurposing of it. Because the thing is, the overhead of it is just too much. I mean, if it doesn't, it's based. I mean, like the projections are based. The projections on investing in those things are based upon what amount of cash flow it brings in. I mean, it's kind of like any business. Like case in point, like right now, businesses that are booming right now, of course, are the industrial warehouses, distribution centers, cannabis, quick service restaurants. So quick service restaurants, meaning like the small ones that are just primarily like drive. They have no sit down space. They just have drive throughs. May have a walk up window, and that's the extent of it.
Yeah,
But those are the ones that are thriving in this environment. But like anything that really requires you to kind of be close and interact with people, in which the previous model that worked up until March is pretty much they're dying. I mean, the only thing where you'll see where transactions are occurring where people have to live close together is maybe apartment buildings. Um, and even those in certain areas are dying, are not doing too well.
sure.
Yeah. So I think that it's I don't to get back to the point. I don't see like movie theaters at this unless they figure out in a way to pivot and create safe spacing, initiatives, or they create some type
Yeah,
of barrier. Yeah, that
that's why I'm saying too. Like going back to the whole innovation thing. Like I'm not talking about complete takeovers either. Like I'm talking about like shared partnerships or something where you know where we there's an understanding that they they've been sort of living symbiotically, with each other for a long time.
uh-huh.
So there's at some point they got to be like either we got to keep living together or we just gonna separate. And we'll see who's involved in that because I think at some point somebody's gonna be like, yeah, we gotta keep the relationship going as it is, or one like, or there's just gonna be that separation going forward.
Blockbuster is a great analogy. So I don't know. Someone mentioned. I don't know where I heard this before, but at some point, I had heard that. I don't know if it was Netflix, or some other online streaming service tried to buy Blockbuster. That's of course 20
Okay.
years ago, and they laughed. They said,
Yeah.
they said,
I think I know. I think I know
get
the story you're talking about.
they're like, get the hell out of here. We're not going anywhere. Hindsight being 2020, I'm pretty sure they wish they would have taken that buyout. I mean, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
I mean the model shift. I mean it was more, I guess the thing is, I think the thing about COVID, and I think what a lot of people don't understand, the ability to pivot is required. There was no writing on the wall for COVID. There's writing on the wall for other, innovations in technology, and you not pivoting in time, is what makes you one of the casualties of innovation, right? So you not being able to see as a blockbuster that people are going to be streaming movies and not buying or renting DVDs from a movie or for a store. No, actually, I think it's Redbox tried to buy it. I think it's because I think Redbox tried to buy um, Blockbuster, and they
Yeah,
laughed
I
at them.
think, yeah, I think you're right. You're right. I
It's
think you're right.
Redbox because Redbox was the technology was the disruptor before Netflix.
Yeah, yeah,
So so the point is that with those type of disruptions, you can see that coming. Whether you want to see it or whether you would pivot to it, ultimately you're the person who's ends up at fault for it, that you didn't have the foresight to see it. No one could see COVID coming, and they had to pivot in a very short amount of time. So I think the issue, and an issue in businesses where you tend to have high overhead, and you don't tend to, your cash reserves get eaten real quick. So it doesn't even matter for like businesses that may have had 3 6 months of reserves, whether you're in a restaurant industry or whether you're in the film industry. If your expenses stay the same and your income is not going any, and you're not making any more income, at some point you're going to hit a wall, and at some point you're no longer going to be able to meet your debt obligations. You're not going to be able to meet payroll, and and you're just going to end up short, for lack of a better term. And I think that's what's ended up happening during COVID. And I think the reality of it is that while the movie industry and movie houses once had a symbiotic relationship, is one going to take over the others to save them? I mean, to bail out? No, they're not the government, so they're not going to provide a bailout for this, for and for private movie houses, ultimately it's something that they kind of have to figure out a way that they're going to, I guess, save themselves. Unfortunately, um,
Wait, yeah, because like I said, the ties are still there. The the movie, Disney and Warner Brothers and Universal, they're all gonna eventually need places to show their
well,
movies again.
I do think so, but I think it's gonna look different though. That's
Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
thing of it. It's like, so
yeah.
yeah, they're not gonna do so. Like, even if I mean what, well, I mean, I don't know what, I don't even know what tenable space or what tenable solution that traditional movie houses offer to, at this point, to be able to create an audience, or people to pay, to, I guess, patrons. But the film industry has plenty of options. They can go do it. They can do it at a concert venue, open door concert venue. They can do it at drive-in. They can do it at a football stadium. I mean, there'll be options for them, and no one's going to say, especially in this environment, nobody's going to tell them no. If you go to I mean, if Warner Brothers calls Tinley Park Convention Center and say, hey, we want to show movies here, they're not going to tell them no. I mean, especially in this environment. If you
Yeah.
know, if
They
yeah,
like have stuff that they were gonna do originally at those spots that they can't do anymore.
they have to feel right. They have a schedule that they have to feel. I mean, if Soldier Field, I mean, when the Bears stop playing, which is always early. I mean, you know, so
Yeah, never much past January. Yeah.
yeah, so if Warner Brothers or Paramount or Sony, say, hey, what, we want to show films here for when the Bears are not playing, I'm sure they're going to, Hallis family, I don't know who owns the real estate, is going to say, sure. I mean, so,
Yeah, the city too. Like
yeah, the city,
they've
yeah.
had they have had drive-in events at the parking lot at Soldier Field over the summer.
Right. So I mean, yeah. So I mean, I think so. The point I'm trying to make here is that the movie industry, is not going to be the losers in this situation. And I mean, I mean, because the thing is, the streaming service, even with the streaming subscription, if somebody tells you, if they're charging $10 a month and they want to go up to 15 on their price, yeah, where are you going? And you want to see, first rate movies, really, where are you gonna? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
where you gonna go?
right, yeah, the consumers are left sort of in a bad position in that way.
You can't go to bootleg man to COVID. I mean, I don't know. I mean, hopefully, I mean, for those who
But
are not
that is an issue I read in another piece where when you have these first runs going straight to streaming, that changes the bootleg game because soon as you get a pirater that gets that first run, you're getting a theater quality version of the movie right away. They gonna release when they can release it onto the web, onto the internet. Then that's it. You're not getting those second rate streams anymore. You're getting a first rate stream right away.
right. Yeah, I know. I mean that. I mean, look, that's always a risk, but I think that it require. I mean, I think it require. I think that for. I think a lot of people, not to be rude, but I think a lot of people are going to take the easier way. Are they going to go? If I got a choice between paying $15 a month, or go to the booth, or I gotta go do a Google search for a good quality of a movie every time one comes out, or if I have the streaming at my hands, at my fingertips, then I'll probably take the easier way out. I mean, there's some people who will probably be like, you know what, it's easier for me to look up a movie, but I think that the majority of people.
A lot of people are crooked and cheap too.
Well, no, I think a lot of people are crooked and cheap, but I think there's also enough people in, America who just really
Oh
tend to
no,
go I mean, the subscription-based model works for a reason.
yeah,
Because one, and especially the low cost subscription based model works the best because there's a lower probability of it being canceled. You get that $15 a month charge, you'd be like, damn, I forgot to cancel that. Another month you may write it down somewhere, forget about it. Get hit again. Damn, I forgot to cancel. I mean, so you end up, and especially if it goes to a credit card, you really don't think about it and
Yeah.
until it's too down, until you're laid down the thing. I mean, we all have had subscription based services where we don't use it. How many people had gym memberships, hundreds of dollars a year, and they don't use the damn things, and they have an intention to cancel, but they don't go, but they forget to cancel.
Right.
So I mean, even so I don't think it's so
Yeah,
the movie.
that's a thing now where there's that's sort of a mini industry now where people uh people providing services or apps or something that help you remember chart recurring charges that you get on you that you have on your accounts and stuff. So and when so they try to alert you to accounts that you're not really using.
Right.
So you don't have those empty you don't have those recurring charges that you don't really want or need on your stuff. But
Yeah.
I'd say too, going back to what you say with pricing, like Disney just before we got on, like there's been some reports of Disney uh having I think when D wrote his piece, he mentioned them being at like 78 million subscribers for Disney Plus, and they announced today that they're up to like 89 or something, like almost 90. So they're gaining a bunch of subscribers every day, and I think the Netflix is the industry leader right now with like 150 some. Like Disney will probably hit that within the next 12 months. So especially when you look at them, really, they're uh, I'm sort of torn on this, but they're really playing. They're playing the Marvel and the Star Wars card hard. Like they're gonna make a series out of every ancillary character in the Marvel universe and the Star Wars universe before it's over.
Mhm.
Like they announced like a Lando Calrissian series. They announced two spinoffs for the Mandalorian, which is great. The Mandalorian is great, but they've announced two spinoffs from that series already. They got an Obi-Wan Kenobi series they're doing with Star Wars, and there's like 8 Marvel series that they're planning that are already in production, really. So they like Disney is gonna like I saw a friend of mine on Facebook say Disney is applying the scorched earth policy with its IP. Like they they're gonna burn it all down just to make sure that you have some reason to subscribe to Disney Plus.
Oh yeah, I mean yeah, they're gonna squeeze as much as they can out of it. I mean, I don't. When you have I mean, I think that's what it is. Is that when you, I mean, I think with anything with branding, when someone learns that their brand is profitable, they try to. There are two people. I mean, there are two types of people. I mean, you kind of and you see it play out like even when it just comes like the people who are in film, actors and actresses, and great examples like Kevin Hart. Like Kevin,
Yeah,
I'm like Kevin's gonna be Kevin sells clothes. Kevin sells. I mean, he sells movie. I mean, he's movies, his comedy shows. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, he'll
Credit
hard.
card commercials, all
All
type of
right, yeah, he's gonna. I mean, yes, and there's that, and then there's the actor who feels like, okay, well, you know what, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z because this goes against whatever my character, whatever my brand identity is. And
yeah,
there's some people that say, like, you know what, I'm going to juice it for all it's worth. I don't come, case in point, the Mario Lopez with the KFC thing. Somebody had posted that, and it's like, if I was like, I don't like, I was just like, this is awful. I mean, but and it's really, and I guess, and I told my wife, I was like, I can understand you being a starving artist and doing something like that, right? Or you looking for, you're in Hollywood and you don't have a lot of, you don't get a lot of work, right? So I'm
yeah,
like, so if you got a choice between doing this and porn, do it. But you're Mario Lopez. You have enough of a brand identity. You have enough, you know, income. What will consider from your current, job.
But I think too with a Mario Lopez in particular, nothing against him. I like, I think he's an amenable enough dude. But I think he probably just sees that like that's really my only way of being Mario Lopez is by not turning down anything, like getting work, putting in all the work that I can, and put myself out there in many ways as possible. Like he does the Access Hollywood shows every day.
Right. Yeah.
He does he's doing the Save by
Yeah.
the
Those are
Bell
towers.
reboot. He
Yeah.
could have easily turned that down, but
Right.
but he's doing that. He's doing like you say, doing the KFC Lifetime movie thing. Like he go he does like whatever else any other hosting job that's available to him. He's willing to do it because he gotta that's how he's gonna pay his bills from now until he's 70, 80 years old. Probably he's just some people just have to make themselves that ubiquitous because
It's not.
there isn't that like you say some people are talented or in that way where they could be like a Daniel Day-Lewis or something like he's apparently retired now, but even when he was active still he was doing movies like once every 4 years
Right.
because there was that demand for him was like when you knew when he was doing something he was doing something that was gonna be game changing or award worthy or something like that. But on the other hand, a person like Mario Lopez, they're looking at looking at everything more in a working class situation where it's like, yeah, I gotta take every gig available to me.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. I don't know if it's just being the minority being in the space.
That
Cause I'm thinking,
that's definitely could be a part of it. Yeah,
cause I'm thinking like and either person like Steve Harvey, it's like Lord, and
yeah,
I understand.
yeah,
And I understand the Steve Harvey even more than I do Mario Lopez because Steve is pushing 65. So I can understand you being like in a mindset where like I'm a squirrel as many nuts as I can because I'm getting old. I
yeah,
get that. Mario's what 10 years older than us, so he's like 47. So I'm
yeah,
like, you still got a good another 20 to 25 years for you to flesh out a career, especially in Hollywood. And the great thing about Hollywood is kind of like once you become, have some renown, whatever it is, you continue to eat in many cases.
yeah,
I mean, I was telling somebody like my greatest financial aspiration is probably to be a B actor in Hollywood. Like I share like a story with like my family here. Don't ask me. They're really big Dolly Parton fans, and Dolly Parton has like these like she has like her own like film studio now,
oh yeah,
and she did like a Dolly Parton Christmas movie, and she had like she had like Treat Williams, and I'm like, where did you find what '90s Betamax movie did you find Treat Williams in? And I was just like, to be able to be an actor at some point, and just to be a B actor in like Hollywood, you can make a living off. Like I saw, like yeah,
that's
like
pretty
I said,
sweet. But
yeah, like yeah, I can I only do I'm a B actor in these B movies, but I make a few $1,000,000 a year. Fine with me.
yeah. And I might get bothered a little bit when I'm in public, but it's not a madhouse when I'm on Rodeo Drive or nothing like
No, right, exactly. I
TMZ is
mean,
stalking me every
it's
time I'm out,
I, you
outside and stuff.
I rather, no disrespect to Jeffrey Owens, but I'd rather be that than Jeffrey Owens. I mean, or my man from Girlfriends. Like this is like like Lord, yeah, like everybody, well, yeah, just let me work, God. I don't. If I'm not getting you work, I'll be Colonel Sanders. But if I'm Mario Lopez, no, I'm not going to be Colonel Sanders. I think that's the point. If I'm getting it,
I feel you, but I think for Mario, I think that's part of what, like I say, for him, that's part of what he's in the business for. So he could be Colonel Sanders if he wants, and he could also be the guy on Access Hollywood, and he could also be AC Slater and still get a bag off of that for 30 years.
Yeah, but you think about like you have to look in the mirror and know like even if you're your own person, you don't may not think about, okay, like I don't represent anybody else. You gotta look in the mirror. You gotta say, you know what, I'm a Latino man. There's a lot of people out there look at me, who probably and who see me in certain lights, and
He represent La Raza, right?
he ain't representing nobody, right? That's the whole problem. I'm just like it wasn't, if you want to if you want to what is it called, take artistic license, and you want to like be a historical figure that wasn't Latino or whatever your race is. If you want to do a what is it a not, Hamilton, if you want to do a Hamilton, that's one thing. But doing appropriating a Colonel Sanders is just no, that's not the move. That's not the move unless if I'm down in that.
It's not that. I don't know if it's that serious. Like
Yeah,
they've done a bunch of these Colonel Sanders characters with different races and people and men and women. They just doing something silly with that character. I think I
yeah.
look beyond it, beyond
Well,
what you know about.
the last one I saw was the last one I remember is Norm Macdonald. So I don't know the
Yeah,
rest of them. So Norm Macdonald, yeah, no offense, Norm Macdonald being Colonel Sanders made complete sense to me because it's Norm Macdonald.
yeah. Well, he's a comedian. Yeah, so it's like
Right.
they
It's just,
they mostly done those with comedians. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know why they're doing. I guess because it's Lifetime. Maybe they're adding like a more romantic element to it or something. But I don't know why they got Mario Lopez. But apparently, it was something that entertained the people who producing that thing, and
people in
it
Hollywood,
entertained enough for him.
I don't like you hear like what's his name? You hear Dave have him talk about Hollywood being a weird place, and it's like I don't even need to be immersed in Hollywood to understand like Hollywood's a weird place. It's like
No, not at all.
you watch the stuff that's coming out, and he's like, yeah, this looks like a weird place. Just
Yeah,
because what goes to what people what and what people what the tastemakers or decision makers consider something being clever or artful. Um, in many cases, it's just not very good. And we see that whether it's film today, people like you said milking all the damn Marvel and Star Wars,
yeah.
um, into just to the bone, and then you see that in music, which we talked about ad nauseum. But yeah, it's really it just becomes tough to support. It just becomes tough to watch sometimes. I don't know.
I understand, man. I understand. Let's flip it over there and let's get into some of this
Oh yeah,
direct talk. And you talk about you know brand management and quality control and things like that. I think a guy who will probably be on the other end of that spectrum from the Mario Lopez's of the world would probably be a Francis Ford Coppola.
yeah,
Uh, as a renowned filmmaker, he's slowed down. Like he's quite a bit in the past 20 years. He hasn't made I looked at his filmography on Wikipedia, and doing like and just going over. You do those dives, those information dives on people when you see something that comes
yeah,
across with them and stuff. And what started me with Coppola actually was two things. Was one, it was his film The Cotton Club it was made the year of my birth, 84. So back when it was sort of the tail end of his prime, you could probably say. And it was a movie that was sort of divisive when it came out because it was about the Cotton Club was a famous club in Harlem during the Renaissance era. It was fueled by black entertainers and stuff, but it was backed by gangsters and of the time in New York. And he wanted to make another gangster epic in the vein of what he did in the 70s with The Godfather and stuff. But he also did actually include a lot of blackness in the movie. There's people like Gregory Hines, Lynette McKee, um, some other people. Actually, there's Jack Hay is in the movie. And I'll get to this. I'll get to this because her part, she had a part that was cut, and it was reintroduced in the film in this re-edit that he done. That's where I'm getting to here. But the film that came out for wide release in '84 was panned in a lot of ways because of the way that it was one sided with the story with the gangsters and stuff, but it didn't do enough to tell the story of the black people in the film, the creatives and stuff. And there was some black gangsters in the movie too. Actually, uh, like 13 or something years before he played Bumpy Johnson in Hoodlum, Lawrence Fishburne played Bumpy Johnson in this movie. So
Damn.
yeah, yeah. So I see the movie. So this movie, like I said, the Cotton Club comes out in '84. It's so returns and responds to it. He winds up years later, Coppola re-editing the movie and adding like around 20 minutes of footage to it that he would have had otherwise. Because and the issue back in '84 was that uh, the producers were like it was too much.
It's too many. It's too black for them.
Too many. There's too much black stuff. We gotta get that out the film.
Can I interject for 1 second? There's a great scene that kind of summarizes what movies was in the '80s, and in American Psycho, what's his name? Christian Bale somebody asked Christian Bale, "Do you listen to Huey Lewis in the news?" And he's like, "No, it's too black for me." And it's just like, and of course, I mean, I didn't know who you find out later there are no black people in Huey.
Of course, of course. Right. That shows you how white he intended to be. Like, that was a good one. Yeah. But there was too much blackness in the movie. He cut it, and they wanted him to they wanted it to be just a straight gangster thing, and it didn't work. And he winds up making releasing the movie that he didn't really want to release. But years later, and he's done this several times. Well, not several times, but a few of his movies, he's redone them. He did it with Apocalypse Now, and he's doing it with Godfather 3, which we'll get to in a minute. But the Cotton Club, he redoes it. Is released as the Cotton Club Encore, and it has more footage of it, more of the story of Gregory Hines. Gregory Hines was supposed to be like the second lead, or an equal lead with Richard Gere. Richard Gere was on the other side. He had a love story thing with Diane Lane, and he was the guy at the moment, Richard Gere. So he was the marketable white lead, and you had Gregory Hines on the other side who was the black lead. But so much of his story got cut out where in the end it was like, well, is he a lead or not? But he wasn't. But the way that they edited in '84, but Coppola tried to make up for that with under his control. He redoes the movie. Well, no, not really redo it, but just add that footage back and it fleshes out the black character story more, and to the degree where now they show it on Bounce TV, which is they got to show it. If they show it on Bounce TV, it's got some sort of blackness into it. So that's where I saw that movie this past weekend, and I went and looked at some other stuff, looked at it, and I came across these stories about him redoing Godfather 3 and having a new edit for Godfather 3, which is by far, which had its own issues. It was released in 1990. It was, which was like, that was like 16 years after Godfather 2. So it was a big separation between that and the first two movies, which are universal film classics. Definitely among my favorite movies as well. personally, but universally they're seen as two of the greatest movies of all time. And those are the films that really set in stone Coppola's impact as a filmmaker in the 70s. But but the 90s, well, it was a different time. It was the bringing on of the 90s. It was a different time. You know, you know, Pacino was different at that time. He was more of a broader actor at that time, and you know, people mostly from that movie with him, they get the whole they pulling me back in, they pull me back out, that whole
Yeah,
thing,
I
and
think I think it's also great to kind of juxtapose this to the next person, but there was another big movie that came out in '90, which probably overshadowed this. But
well, yeah, oh yeah, well, yeah, Scorsese, yeah, we'll do some tying in with that with Scorsese, but with Coppola, and yeah, and that was see that, and I'll do a little tying in right now. Part of what hurt The Godfather 3 too in '90 was the fact that it was released the same year as probably the only film that ranks up with the original two Godfathers as far as gangster films go, and that's Goodfellas. So it was like Scorsese was Scorsese was hitting his prime at this point, and Coppola was looking like, he was looking like Larry Holmes, flabby and sick,
that,
compared to him, and that just really set the as far as just the high profile and everything. He still is very respected and everything, but his output in the '90s it decreased. He did lesser movies, and he just fell back in a lot of ways as a director of renown by that point.
but but it's a good point. But it's a good to kind of juxtapose both of their careers
Yeah,
because in the '70s, in the '70s, Scorsese kind of he had his high points and he had his low points. To your point, he hadn't hit his prime. They're both the same. They're both the same age. Coppola
yeah,
hits
they
his
are.
prime.
Yeah,
Yeah, Coppola hits. They're practically the same. About I think it's like 2 years difference.
yeah,
Coppola hit his prime early. So
yeah.
Coppola hits his
You're right.
prime,
You're right.
and like Coppola hits his prime
Him
in
and
his
Lucas
thirties.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Coppola hits his prime in his 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other directors that they've kind of been in the same situation where they hit their prime or they hit their prime relatively early as a film director. So he hits his primes in his 30s. Scorsese doesn't hit his prime for pretty much almost another 2 decades, another
You're right.
15, 20 years. And I
Yeah.
think that's something to just kind of point out is that everybody kind of, I guess the point to tie in is that everybody kind of has their day. It's just it doesn't happen at the same time. And
Yeah.
while I'm pretty sure Scorsese in 72, 74, he was doing films with his mom in the house at the same and he did Mean Streets, and Mean Streets to me was the equivalent of Godfather 3. It was that slow. And I mean, just to be able to come back and take off during the '90s, where he did for me three of his best films, and Coppola was struggling at that point. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. And yeah. That's. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good juxtaposition there. And they were a part of this community of filmmakers. Like they were close. Like they hung out with each other and stuff back in the '70s and stuff. But they were doing different things and sort of representing in different ways. And like their creativity was in different ways. And they were and it's funny to say like Scorsese was living kind of wild. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we talk about him. But I want to finish up the stuff with Coppola.
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, Godfather 3 he's doing a re-edit on Godfather 3 that's releasing this year. It's like there's been reporting about it now. Let me have to look and see when exactly it's going to come out if it's not already. But it's happened already and it's being released at if not now then some point soon. And it's interesting to me like I haven't seen. Like I said, I don't know what your relationship with Godfather 3 was, but I've never seen it. I've never seen the edit that was released in 1990, the wide release, I didn't, and it was primarily because of the way that people have talked about it. Like, and when you look at, also when you look at one and two, you pretty much get all the story that you need. Not only because the two movies combined are like 6 hours, but
Yeah.
it's just a complete arc and narrative that's there from the beginning of one, where Michael is this young soldier, who just came out of the war, and he's more or less alienated from what his father and his brothers do in the crime family and stuff, and to the point where, at the end of two, he's alone. Everybody, all of his trusted advisors, and essentially, except for Tom Fagan, are dead. He
Hmm.
had to kill his brother, and he's just this cold hearted and displaced mafia don, and it's just the most amazing pair of amazing pair of movies for one story that you can put together. And really, what else do you need to say at that point about the life of crime and the life of the historical narrative that it reflected from the real life mobsters of the 40s and 50s that it was reflecting. And that was,
Yep.
and it was just it's not you can't say enough about it, essentially. So, why do you even need this third movie? You don't necessarily need it, but there is, apparently he had something that he wanted to say. They had something that they wanted to say. Those characters, those people, and they did it. But as even as a person who loved those first two movies, I just never felt compelled to watch that third film. So for you, how was what was your thinking about that movie, and everything?
Well, I haven't seen three yet, so but I like I said, I put in the chat wineries versus Coke. So to compare, I mean, and the whole juxtaposition is that the Coppola family, they own wineries in Napa Valley up here
Yeah,
in California, and I think and you kind of understand his approach towards filmmaking is that it's this romantic, long drawn out thing. It's like I'm assuming you drink wine, it's to
something you
relax,
savor, and yeah,
savor, and you relax after whatever it is you're going through. And it's a and it's also romanticizing of what the mob is. I mean,
oh
I
yeah,
think it's also part of the reason why a lot of rappers identified or in that lifestyle, because it shows them, Coppola, I guess presented them with a certain level of not we'll say sophistication, but a certain level of more anything, a certain level of class.
yeah, yeah.
What I like,
Aspiration, aspirational class, and
I mean,
like,
they were gentlemen. They were
yeah,
gangsters. They
yeah.
were gangsters, gentlemen at the same
There was
time.
gentleman. There was the La Cosa Nostra. There's a code and there's a way of living behind it that like I said, elevates the idea. These are all criminals, man. These are all criminals and thugs and everything. They're murderers, but there's like you said, a sense of sophistication and elevation to it.
Yeah,
That
there's an ethos that's behind the way that they operate,
right,
and I think that's So really, that's a part. That's what Coppola presented. I mean, for me, I don't. It moved a little. I mean, they were great stories for what they are. Don't get me wrong. I think it's kind of like eating. It was like eating Italian food. You eat enough of it, it puts you to sleep, though. So it's kind of like it. I mean, you eat a lot of bread. You're eating a lot of carbs. It fills your stomach, makes you sleepy. And I think that's really what Coppola's movies were. I mean, they were long. They were long. They're meditative pieces,
yeah,
and you really just had to have the bandwidth to to do that, to appreciate that. And to be honest, I haven't seen any of the Godfathers in quite some while. I used to be a you know I used to be a Puzo fan, so I used to read the books. On
Mario
it.
Puzo, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I tried to, but so to provide me some backstory towards it. But yeah, like I said, I think it'll be interesting to see what he does with the third one, and maybe at some point when I had a bandwidth, I'll watch it. But what I've learned is that for whatever reason, the long meditative pieces don't really stick with me as, they don't resonate with me as well. I mean, it's great. It's a part of definitely a part of the canon.
Yeah,
So the first two. But like I said, to your point, I don't know what more exposition that they could have pulled out in, Godfather 3 that hadn't been done in the first two movies.
yeah,
And I think that it wasn't right. And the reason why it probably did so bad is that the 90s were a new decade. I think that if he made that movie like a year or two prior, I think he would have been I think it would have had better reception, because I think like there was still more of appreciation in the 80s for that type of long narrative exposition, sleepy a little bit type of movie. I think the 90s was just a bit, especially for like crime films. They were
yeah.
a lot edgier.
You need more of a kineticism,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, and when you looked at uh Goodfellas was a lot more. Yeah, Goodfellas was on a rock and roll beat where the Godfather movies is on. They're on that what's that Tantranella that that old uh, that old school, that old world feel, the old world Italian music, the
Oh
theme,
yeah.
the Godfather theme, like that.
Right.
That's what backs that movie and those
Mm.
movies in general. Whereas Scorsese, all the music in, but just about like 90% of the music in Goodfellas was 60s and 70s rock and roll. It was hard charging. It was
Mm.
yeah. It was more just more kinetic.
It was wine. It was winery versus Coke.
Coke,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah. I mean, that was the yeah. It's like I said.
yeah.
It's
Wine versus Coke, yeah.
wine versus Coke. I mean, you
Yeah.
have wine at the end of a long day to unwind and relax. You have Coke when you're trying to charge through the day, and
Yeah.
it's
And you watch it for helicopters in the sky. Yeah.
that scene is one of the best scenes in film ever. I
Yeah.
that montage, that scene is like one of the best. I don't know, like it's the best bottled or best synthesized scene of like mania in any film that I've ever seen.
That whole sequencing and the day, that just the way that the storytelling of that whole day, like that's just it was
It's
amazing, man.
it's one of the best. I mean, it like what it's you make exceptions for certain things that occur in like deficits in Scorsese's films. The lack of minorities, whatever, or even just like kind of the negative projections against minorities. And
Yeah,
you do that just because he's so good at what he does well. And
yeah.
and I think that tends to be the thing like that. Even like what you reading, just the backstory on Goodfellas, is that a lot of he made those characters better human beings in many cases what they were. I mean,
Oh
Henry
yeah,
Hill,
yeah.
yeah, like Henry Hill's character was scumbag. He made him at least to be a more handsome scumbag. The real
Right,
Henry
he was
Hill,
there. Ray Liotta was there. If you look at Henry Hill in real life, like
he was not a
yeah,
very attractive man.
yeah, you can look at Henry Hill and,
Gave me
and
a,
what he's become of his life
he's
after that time. Like he's just as bad as they, like. There's interviews
he's
with
dead
him.
now. He's dead
Yeah,
now,
he's
but
dead now, but
yeah.
there were interviews. There's videos of him and stuff. He did like a couple appearances on Howard Stern where he came into the studio drunk, and of course that was enough for Howard Stern to just make him into all type of fodder. Like like Henry Hill had issues, man, and kind of
Yeah.
rightfully so, but he was nowhere near the type of charismatic person that he was portrayed to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's, if anything that you could kind of call out Scorsese on, is what he does is he romanticizes certain characters and make them better human beings. And like, if you're gonna make a mob movie and you're gonna make it what it is, make the people full pieces of shit. I mean, like don't make them like I mean, like make it like don't make it make them authentic. Don't make them partially. Don't make this
Well, yeah,
revision of it.
yeah. I think to a degree you can argue at the center Henry was like yeah, he was sort of baby faced and charismatic in a way, but you could look at De Niro's character, and even De Niro's character Conway, like the guy that was based on, he was like it's much more of the he's not the raw uncut, but he
No.
still in the portrayal you still get across that this was a guy who this is a cold blooded dude. He was a killer. He would turn on his friends, just as easy as anything. To the point where by the end, he was, you really thought that he was going to send off Henry's wife to be killed and raped in that alley.
Lorraine Bracco, yeah,
Yeah,
that was. I mean, that's a great scene. No,
yeah,
yeah, but
and of course, Pesci too. Like his character was a maniac. He was,
he was, yeah,
yeah,
and he was. But even with them, I don't know. It was even. I think the challenge for me was that the irony was the kind of like of the racial superiority thing that you kind of saw some of their characters kind of play out, and Goodfellas, and it's just like they were all pieces of shit. Even even Lorraine Bracco's character, like I like Lorraine Bracco's character in the movie, and to find out she was
yeah.
having an affair with Paulie in real life.
Yeah, you mean the real
Right,
person. Yeah,
Karen Hill was having, yeah,
Karen Hill. Yeah,
she was having an affair with Paulie. I don't know who.
Paulie. Yeah,
Yeah, in real life, and you're just like, these people were some just shitty human beings. And
yeah. And that's why they did what they did, man.
I mean but I don't know, but I mean, looking at Nicholas Pileggi now, none of that's surprising. I mean, he seems to kind of like to whitewash. Like there's a certain part of his character that seems like the way he does things seems to whitewash. I mean, it's just kind of what he's done before in the past, and it's kind of come evident, I think, really with a lot of some of the controversy around the Irishman. Just
Yeah,
with what's his name's, I can't think of the main character's name right now. De Niro's
yeah,
character.
yeah.
Yeah. The book that it was I heard you paint houses. The original book that it was pulled from.
Mm-hmm.
His character was not he was known to be a bit of a compulsive liar.
Frank
So
Sheeran.
Frank Sheeran, yeah, that he was known to be a bit of a compulsive liar. He was putting himself like at the middle of every damn like famous gangling killing,
Yeah, he's the
and
Forrest
like
Gump of the mafia.
he was effectively, yeah, he was the Forrest Gump of the
Yeah,
mafia. He was at every major killing, that occurred.
yeah.
You know, yeah. So but yeah, no, but I think with compared, but even with all of its, I want to say not factual inaccuracies, but even with all of its some of its creative licensing and just the kind of
It's
the
no
characters.
romanticism, and a lot of that is part of what you get though with a filmmaker who is trying to tell the most compelling story that they can, because if I get what you're saying in regards to being natural, having the natural portrayals and being as reflective being as reflective of history and real life as you can. But there's a point, I think, if you tell a real gangster story to that degree, you're for one, it could be unrelenting to the point where it just would be off-putting.
It
And
would be,
yeah,
it'd be to tie into another director we're gonna talk about later. It'd be like watching it'd be like
12 Years
watching
a Slave.
it would be like watching one of his films. It would just be like
Yeah,
unrelenting brutality.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
They say poverty or
Pain
pain
porn. Yeah,
porn. Yeah,
yeah.
pain,
It would just be pain porn. It wouldn't be this glamorized life that like these.
yeah,
That would be a great interview to do. To like have a rapper and then have a rapper like on a show and then like to read to him like the real story behind like these stories that they espouse and then just
sure.
like see their faces.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah,
like, to tell Nas to have him like read, Mario Puzo's The Godfather to like Nas and then see what his thoughts are on it, or or read Wise Guy and to just see what what their responses are to it, their reactions are to it.
right. And
Yeah,
and
that.
that is good because like you say, so many of the rappers and stuff, they get all their stuff comes from their influences comes primarily from the film versions of these stories.
Not the book.
Yeah, not the book. Yeah, because how many are really reading like that? But it's easy for them. It's easier for them to watch Goodfellas or the Godfather or Scarface, and not the other two at least have book versions, but you know, or yeah, definitely. But I want to mention right quick too. You talked about Coppola and his meditative is leaning more towards meditative stories, more elongated stories and stuff like that. You know, and it's interesting because you mentioned the Irishman, and where we're at this point now with Scorsese, where he's not in his prime, of course, and he's sort of winding down. And even though he's still very much making movies, but he's much more active than Coppola is. But he's sort of winding down, and a lot of what was depicted in The Irishman, at least in the media, was that it was sort of this this end or this coda, and coda is an interesting word too because coda is used on the the new title for the Godfather 3 edit is that word is used in that title as
Hmm.
Godfather 3 coda or something like that. But it's basically this ending of this class or this era of particular gangster movies that you see in these depictions, at least from these filmmakers.
Hmm.
Because and you look at the Irishman, including essentially the triumvirate of character actors and tied to both Coppola and Scorsese and Pacino, De
Nero.
Niro and Pesci, and that was sort of the Irishman was sort of seen in a lot of ways as just like the end of this era that ties back to Casino, to Goodfellas, to
Hmm.
the Godfather movies, and up to Mean Streets essentially.
Hmm.
Where you had these and Keitel, you can and was in the movie too, and the Keitel go
Right.
ties back to Mean Streets, and yeah, it's just interesting the way that those two again sort of tie into each other throughout throughout these past 40, 50 years.
Yeah. No, yeah, it is interesting, but I was gonna point out, like, it seems with the Irishman, where I thought where you were going with that was that it's Scorsese's most meditative piece
Oh
for
yeah,
his
yeah.
career.
I was going there, but
Yeah,
I just didn't end up mentioning. But yeah,
yeah.
it's his most Coppola like piece. Yeah,
Right. I mean,
yeah.
it took him till you got to 77, 78 to make it.
Right,
Coppola's like, I'm ahead of you. I was making those movies 40 years ago.
right.
Making these. I mean, and I think that movie, if he made it, like if he made that movie 40 years ago, one, he wouldn't have had to spend all the money on Netflix, effects. The
Yeah,
you know the
he
and
wouldn't have
then
to. Yeah, he wouldn't have to change their faces and stuff.
right, he
Yeah,
wouldn't have to pay for all the millions of
digitally.
dollars of CG,
Yeah,
computer
CGI.
generated
Yeah,
CGI, so that, and I think it would have been more well received back then. For
yeah,
for one, I mean, I don't know when I Heard You Paint Houses came out. I think it's like 15 years old, the book. So I know that's where the inspiration came from. But like I said, I think that's probably like those long meditative pieces were appreciated a lot more, you know,
mm.
in the 70s and the 80s, and because I mean, back then TV was. I mean, like that's what a lot of movies were, and TV was shit. So I mean,
Yeah.
it was, or it wasn't. I mean, it was
And it
mediocre.
was, yeah, it was like if you
There was no
I,
Netflix.
right, that was the equivalent, like sitting down because I'm thinking too of another director from that era who made those kind of movies is Michael Cimino. 'Cause he did uh
Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter, yeah, which is like 3.5 hours. He did Once Upon a Time in America, which is another movie that I haven't seen, but
Yeah.
that's like 4 hours. Like so that's basically like sitting down today and like and you mentioned the another guy we'll talk about in a minute, Steve McQueen. Like you sat down and watched 3 movies that he made for a series, and that was about 4 hours in and of itself.
Right.
So
Yeah. But I think the difference is like, you know, what was so refreshing about the Steve McQueen stories was that one, they weren't like focused on pain. Like I said, pain point. Like all like his every movie he's made prior to this series has some focus like on pain or like self-deprecation. Whether it was the hunger, the story about Bobby Sands and the
yeah,
IRA, the hunger fast, whether it was shame, where shame he was talking of, you know, do with sex addiction,
sex abuse, yeah.
yeah, fast bender, sexual addiction, whether it was 12 Years a Slave, which speaks for itself, or whether it was Widows. Am I missing? I don't know if he did anything more than those four.
I don't believe so. No.
Yeah, so yeah, those four films, they all had like deep elements of pain and sadness to them, where you
Yeah.
juxtapose like
Well, yeah,
this.
well,
Yeah,
we'll get into that, but I was just
yeah,
talking about the length for now, as far as
yeah, yeah. Oh,
long,
yeah.
like Samino made one movie in that covered the amount of time that it took for those 3 movies, to cover time, and like that was like a binge session for you watching
Yeah.
those McQueen pieces, but it was just one for Samino. It was just that one film, So that
Yeah,
it's a difference when you're approaching and filmmaking in that way where for one you have the sign off because Samino made big studio movies too, and he was able to get signed off to make a film that took 4 hours to tell, but like you said, it was reflective of an era where filmmakers were more able to indulge themselves in that way, and if especially if you got to make a name for yourself by making a previous piece that was very well received, like a Deer Hunter or something
yeah.
like that, and there wasn't such pressure to pack theaters and make movies that made a plus, that made a profit, or make hundreds of $1 million of profit at that. Any type of profit. It was more about, this is a prestige movie that we want to see made, and maybe it'll get us some Oscar love and stuff like that. But this is a movie that we want to see made because we want to please this director, and we want to see what this director does at their full might and everything.
Yeah, because in the late '70s and the '80s, you only had like a handful of directors who were making like big blockbuster films, and you could almost
Yeah.
name them on one hand. I mean, there was George Lucas, there was Steven Spielberg, there was Robert Zemeckis, and there was who did I'm thinking maybe I'm thinking Ghostbusters. Maybe by the time it got to the second one,
Well, yeah. You could say, by then, Ramis and
Harold Ramis, right?
yeah,
I mean, yeah, and there maybe
John Landis too.
Landis, yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah,
John Landis more than Ramis at that time. Yeah.
And Landis was big, but like I said, what, Rocky, Stallone. So
Stallone. Yeah.
so you got five people who were making movies that were, and yeah, five people essentially that were, and I was in this, five people that were making movies, five maybe six people, Schwarzenegger, who were making movies that were just like packing people in the theaters and making, to your points, like tens, not hundreds of millions of dollars worth of movies. So yeah, you had those people were still making those long, meditative, sleepy pieces. Because one, I think it's just the way people, movies were engendered to a more older audience too. I think back then as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So like right now, nobody really. I mean, if you old for older people, for the thinking crowd, you got A24. Who
Yeah.
else you got? I don't know who else really, who else you got, but A24 being one of them. But the major, film companies are not making things for the meditative crowd, for the people who think, for the
No,
thinkers,
yeah,
as we
right.
call
It's more about it's more about make like say taking advantage of already established characters and stuff like that, like Marvels and DC and Star Wars and stuff like that,
it.
making these
Franchises.
franchises,
Mm.
advancing on these franchises. That's at the we talk about where the most money is invested in everything in Hollywood now, and like A24. There's a few other small movie production companies that I think Brad Pitt, Plan B,
Plan
has,
B, yeah.
has done quite a few of those lower scale projects too, or the more mature projects too. But there's not so much of a investment in that stuff anymore. You got to be creators in a lot of ways got to take it on their own and sort of invest on their own to make those type of projects. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but let's get back to Scorsese. Like he's talking about uh, his evolution, and we talk about Goodfellas, and a lot of the like I think I said this before. Like I wanted to talk about Scorsese in a lot of ways for throughout the time that we've been doing this show, going back to the fall, the late summer, early fall that we started doing this show, because there's been a lot of a lot of posts and everything and stuff I've seen online about uh the anniversaries. No, this was a big anniversary year for quite a few of Scorsese's movies. Uh, Goodfellas being one of them. Goodfellas celebrated its 30th anniversary. It was released in 1990. Good Casino was in 95, so that's a 25-year anniversary there. You had Raging Bull, which was in 1980. That's a 40th anniversary. And there's another movie, After Hours, that was released in 1985. That's a 35-year anniversary there. So Scorsese is a guy who there's a certain relevancy about him that's always there because he's sort of like the dean of American filmmakers, and he's still active, but he still has these movies that from the past that just echo so much, and they still have such a hold on lovers of film and everything. So it was when you think of him on that level, that's interesting enough, of course. But like recently, I just again just doing some more diving on his history and stuff and his filmography. I knew that he had done some shorts and everything, but like there's a video out on YouTube that I highly recommend. Like I said, it features the Safdie brothers in this speaking on his collection of short films that he done. Scorsese did in the 60s and 70s, and the one that jumps out, there's two of them that jump out. I guess one is Italian American that features is about 40 minutes. Is him essentially interviewing his parents, his mother and father. Now, if you're a real Scorsese fan, you know that he used his mother in many of his movies leading up to her passing. But she was in a lot of his classics. Probably the most famous one being the scene in Goodfellas where she welcomes the boys in to a late dinner, and she makes sure that they eat and stuff like a stereotypical Italian mother type stuff. But she plays Pesci's character's Tommy, his mother, in the film, and she has the painting, and she tells a story about the man who doesn't speak, like likening him to
That
Henry Hill.
that
Yeah, that's another
that's
like
that scene is just so like it's such a macabre scene
yeah,
because there's guys, like, you go home, like there's guys still alive in the trunk of the
right, yeah,
car,
right.
and
That's
they
yeah,
go in and they going in to eat. It's I like he probably don't even know. He probably like, I don't know if we even think about Scorsese being like in the horror film category, but like some of his like
No, he hasn't made a straight up horror film, I would think. No.
I that you like there's like parts of that like there are
Yeah.
parts of just his like some of the characters in his movies. I mean Pesci's character clearly being one of them. We would have been at home in any horror film, you know.
Well, that speaks to this darkness that exists in him, and like and like darkness, dark comedy, like but macabre, irony, like all these sort of darker elements of him, and it goes now, it goes again into Italian American didn't really reflect that, but the American Boy is probably
Yeah.
his most famous short. And American Boy, the whole title, as I look it up right now, is called American Boy: A Profile of Stephen Prince,
Yeah.
and he released it in '78. So this is, we'll get into that in a minute about that period of his life. But it's particularly harrowing and interesting part of his life. But the it sort of all stems from his involvement in his friendship, his life at that point with this guy named Stephen Prince. And I'll let you go ahead and talk about Stephen Prince and what makes him interesting.
I mean, from what I recall from it's a New York. So just I'm referencing the New York article that
Yeah,
talks about an early Scorsese star was the guy with the gun. And yeah, Stephen Prince is the greatest, claim to fame is that he was Easy Andy and Taxi Driver.
right,
That he was also like pretty much the straw purchaser who De Niro purchased guns from initially in the hotel room. That's his
right.
story. So I guess, but his
Yeah,
background was
the guns that he does his rampage with, Travis Bickle does his rampage with, he bought from a guy who Stephen Prince portrayed in the movie.
Easy, right? So Easy
Easy.
Andy. Yeah, so Easy Andy's backstory is somehow he gets connected with Scorsese, but his background was that he was in theater and he ended up in California in the late '60s, and he ended up as a part of like Neil Rody's band, Neil Young's band as a
No, Neil
roadie.
Diamond.
Neil Diamond, sorry, Neil Diamond's band.
That's
And,
that's even funnier than Neil Young, because
right,
that
yeah,
like Neil Young, you may expect that more, but Neil Diamond was like he had this little punk, this little punk
yeah,
dope
that's the
fiend
crazy. Yeah, that's the
as
crazy.
his manager.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part. And then that guy was just like, no, 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 we're gonna do it this way. We're gonna do
Yeah,
it my way, or we're gonna do it nothing at all. And that was just like his. And for whatever reason, at some point, him and Scorsese got connected in New York. And I think he said he ended up saying like, "Who's the little, derogatory
F
term
word. Yeah,
gave for who's the little F word," and they ended up becoming fast friends and effectively end up living together. And I guess Prince ended up becoming his de facto security, for lack of a better term.
yeah.
Um,
An American Boy is essentially it's about 50, just over 50 minutes, and it's Scorsese filming Prince telling stories from his life, on the edge. Just drug stories, violent stories. He shoots a guy at one point.
he,
He's
he,
doing all type of drugs. He's dealing with you know all this type of this crazy living, and like dude was really like, to me, I never thought about the proximity that Scorsese had to this stuff, but it makes sense when you look back on it, because he did hang out with a lot of rock and roll types at that point in time, and as he started to get his fame in the early to mid '70s, he went out to California, which was a lot more different people that I'm sure that he had known from his growing up in New York. So he was really stretching his sort of standards and everything at that point, and he at that particular point he had successes, of course, with Mean Streets and a couple other movies. Alice
Taxi
Doesn't Live
Driver.
Here Anymore, and
Mhm.
and a Taxi Driver, of course, was a success. But he did a movie too called New York, New York, which was like this big musical type thing that he did with Liza Minnelli and De Niro, and that didn't really hit.
That was his Cotton Club.
Yeah, that was his Cotton Club. Yeah, and like Prince was there around this whole time, and he was sort of feeding him into him with some sort. He was sense of support, but he was also a source of some negativity too, because of the things that he was doing. But he just was this fascinating dude, and you can see American Boy. Just search it on YouTube is pretty easy to find. I would recommend anybody who has any interest in Scorsese as a person or as a filmmaker, watch that and look up Stephen Prince, because he essentially his career, Scorsese's career, could have went two different ways. And he could have actually been because look up in the New Yorker, it says about his stay in the hospital. You
Yeah,
know, he winds up having a stay in the hospital because of his, I guess,
drug addiction.
drug addiction, and like just the living, the way of living that he was doing at that point. By 77, 78, he was pretty much at the end of his rope, and that was the time that he essentially begins to break off from Prince. By the early 80s, they break off, and they haven't really been in each other's lives since. They haven't beefed. They haven't beefed, but they haven't been in each other's lives. It just was a growing apart thing. But by 80, Scorsese shakes off the negativity and all that stuff, the bad, the stuff that he went through at that particular moment. He makes Raging Bull, and he starts a decade where he becomes he becomes probably the primary artistic American director at that point. But by 90, he really breaks and sets himself apart with Goodfellas. But the 80s was a big, it was a growing decade for him, and I would guess a maturing decade as a man, because since then we haven't, like, he's just now, he at this point he's just the old guy. He's the old, he seems like he's the old nerdy
Well,
film guy.
he,
But it was just interesting to me to think of him at a younger age, where he was experimenting with certain things, and spending time with people who shoot people, and did drugs with abandon, and wrestled in living rooms for no reason, like
yeah,
he did at the beginning
with
of
George Romoli. Yeah.
yeah, at the beginning of, like, these were artistic people, but they were wild. Like, they weren't like art geeks. Some of them were really, out there like that. Also criminal stuff close to it.
I think that what really was the most interesting thing about Scorsese is during this whole time he's married. He's like,
Yeah,
so he stayed. So
yeah.
I mean,
He
what?
hasn't been divorced. Like,
No, he's been divorced like 4 times. That's the whole point. So like he's
I
it's
know,
like,
I know. I looked at that wrong. Okay, you're right.
yeah. So
I looked at that wrong.
I mean, he's been married consistently for the last 20 years, but from the time when
Yeah,
he was
his
in his
most recent wife has been from '99. Yeah,
right. So, but from the time of the late 60s, he got married like at 25 or something like that. So, from the time he was 25 to the time he's almost, I don't know what is that at that point, 50 something, he's in his late 50s. He's married 3 other times, and it's really just fascinating. It's like during the time when they were filming um, the American Boy, he was married like twice, like during that time period, and it's just like
mm.
who were like I don't know. And one person he was married to for like maybe a year, and it's just like who are these women? I mean, like it's. That's just I don't it's really weird to be kind of I guess you look at being married differently nowadays, like, but like what did you say, like like married now means you're I think you washed, but like back then it
Being
didn't
here, y'all.
mean
Yeah.
it didn't mean you were washed back then. You could do coke and partying and all that stuff like that, and have families. Like you had like people who are like marriage didn't. I don't know if marriage meant for like some people it meant like one thing, but it was something that everybody did at that time, whether they had character deficits or not. They
Yeah,
were
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
character deficits or not. It's something that everybody did. I wonder
Yeah,
if
you did it to portray yourself as some sort of respectful person, but you really weren't. Like you just
it's like people are like you don't understand. Like it's really it's always great to talk to the older generation and like hear the respectability politics. And the reality of it is that people were just as problematic then as they are now. I mean, it just was the kind of like the facade of decency, And I'm wondering, because he's heavy into his mom, especially with that, short with his mom. I wonder if his mom was like, "Please get married, slow down, get somebody respectable." That's what she
yeah.
tells
She
Joe
probably
Pesci.
did some nagging.
And as she told Joe Pesci, probably told Joe Pesci
Yeah.
that. I think she
Get
told
you a
Joe Pesci and Goodfellas.
yeah,
And
get you a nice lady. I get a nice lady every night.
I'm wondering if that's like a little bit. That's what is it? It's not romantic clef, but I'm wondering if that's the projection from his own life, like his mama in his
That
ear,
probably is, yeah.
telling him like get married, despite riding a white horse all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah. But it's a trip how those things go, man. Like if it could have slightly went another way, maybe we don't get all of these great films that have happened in the past 40 years from him. He could have been a waste, like, or he could have lost his life, but thankfully he didn't, and we got got the continued work that we got from him, from that point on. He
yeah.
didn't, but at the same time, Stephen Prince is still alive, so he was able to survive.
White Marlowe. Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, yeah. I mean, well, yeah, it's that, and for him not even to be alive, it's just for him to be, doing well more than anything.
Right,
Cause
he's married and has a young child. Like that's
at
like that.
70,
Let me.
yeah,
I'm gonna put the link up for that New Yorker piece. Like it's a great read.
yeah,
But
and to end up living in Napa County in California, and you got to, you're an ex drug addict, and you're married to a woman 40 years, your junior, and you got a kid. It's just like, yeah, sounds great. I hope it's like I'm sure most of us hope we fail that well. I mean,
right.
the only person that's failed better than him is the president. So
Yeah, George W. and Trump both sort of failed up in similar ways.
yeah.
But,
So, but yeah, no, but with Scorsese, to your point, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure we have different opinions of what's good of his and what's not. I mean, the way I look at his movie, a
no,
lot of his movies,
what would you? Yeah, because this started with me. Well, not started, but continued in a lot of ways with the. I can't even find that piece now, but the list of his top movies. I think if I remember, his the list starts at number. Well, it doesn't start, but it ends at number one with Goodfellas, and the top three essentially are Goodfellas, Raging Bull, and God, Taxi Driver. Yeah. So essentially, I think you're looking at those three at the top of any list in some order, and then there's everything else. But I don't. But what would you think of? What are the essential Scorsese pieces for you?
Well, honestly, looking back on it, like a few weeks ago, I watched both Casino and Goodfellas back to back, and Casino's actually in some instances it's the better, it's the more
you
polished.
kind of prefer Casino?
It's the more polished one. It's definitely the more polished film.
Yeah,
like they're great. Like I mean, from
I love Casino, man. I love Casino.
In 5 years for him, it was, I don't know how to. I'm trying to think of like if there was a better version of Sopranos, because Sopranos is overrated in my mind. But I'm trying to think if there was a TV show, it's like comparing, if you're dealing with crime, comparing The Wire to Sopranos, and that's actually a good juxtaposition. Is that they don't deal with both with like the mafia, of course, but the mob, of course, but they both deal with criminal life, and they both are on criminal life in the East Coast, and the Wire is definitely the superlative. It's the edgier, it's the sharper, you know, more fast paced version of what The Sopranos is. The Sopranos reminds is more The Godfather than Goodfellas to me in many cases. It's
Well,
just
in some ways, because I think there's a romanticism there with Sopranos. Definitely, I think The Sopranos is more of a indulgence, like a typical. It's a heightened. It's a typical TV indulgence, but it's heightened. The execution was at a level that was never seen at that point.
yeah,
So
yeah, I understand.
it's like
It was a
all these
Cadillac Escalade at the time.
it's like all these but it's like all these things that you saw in TV before, where you had these anti-heroes, like and these looks in these specific looks into a way of living that a lot of Americans weren't really privy to. Like they were familiar with it on some way, but they weren't privy to. I'm thinking of shows like Dallas and Dynasty, and where you got to see rich people and for all their faults and all their and people like a J.R. Ewing, who was a rich, successful person who everybody hated on, to the point where they had who shot JR and all that, But Soprano Tony was that type of dude. He was this complete centrifugal force that powered this ongoing story, and he destroyed a lot of people around him, but he was also charismatic, and he was lovable to the audience in a way where you just had to watch him week after week, and like I said, the power of Gandolfini's performance and so many of the side performances around him, Edie Falco and Michael Imperioli, and like it was just impossible TV to turn down,
especially during that time. Yeah,
yeah. So I think like I said, for me, the triumvirate, again, to have another triumvirate of as far as HBO goes is The Wire and Sopranos and Game of Thrones. But with the first two being on a different level than Game of Thrones. But like if somebody would say, like say anybody who would say that they would put the Sopranos over The Wire, I would understand it. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but I would understand it. But yeah, the Wire, of course, did things very differently than
if I grew up in suburban New Jersey and I saw the mob around me, pretending to be living a pedestrian life, maybe I'd have.
It's not just that, Dave, because a lot of people who that never lived like that loved The Sopranos.
I understand.
It's just a part of a. Like say going when we talk about the way that gangsters have been portrayed from the original Scarface and in the 30s, going back to Jimmy Cagney and all that, going back to going on to the Godfather and Goodfellas. Like that's just a part of America that American storytelling that people love, and Sopranos did it for a television show in a way that it wasn't done before, and like I say, people. It was you could say it was overrated because it was so highly rated, but in most cases it deserved what it got.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good.
It's just unfortunate that a show like The Wire was so underrated during this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the thing. I think it was. I mean, I think Sopranos was good for its time. I guess the thing what I was trying to make was a juxtaposition between, Goodfellas and and Casino is that Casino was just like the more stylistically just well done version of of Goodfellas. It was
But
just was
well, yeah,
yeah.
well is subjective, but
It,
but I think a lot of that has to do with the story that was being told in the era
right.
and the people who he was depicted. He probably stylistically went a different direction because
And
you know
yeah, and he had a bigger budget. I mean, yeah, Vegas, of course, is more flashier than
yeah
suburban New York. But I think, but at the same time, it was just to me, it was a lot. He was he the some of the same thematic things existed. I mean, there was the relationship between the husband and the protagonist and his wife that was dysfunctional. There was the relationship between the protagonist and his best friend that was dysfunctional. There
mm,
was the external influence of the mob at large, who was allowing the protagonist in the film kind of do their own thing until they didn't, until they were at the end, there were checks and balances. I
yeah
mean, and the checks and balances was, in Goodfellas. I keep forgetting what Joe Pesci's character was, Tommy, whatever it's the real name in the movie. But anyway,
his last
uh,
name. Yeah. He just say
yeah,
Tommy. Yeah, yeah.
Tommy's character, and then what's his name, Spilotro's character in Goodfellas, is that they were checks and balances. Like they finally they were allowed to run wild until they were not
Right, right.
effectively. So it's a similar.
It really brings home the whole thing about you being it being your friends that murder you in the mafia. Like it's
Well, yeah, but they were both in both scenarios. They were given a hell of a lot of rope. Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
think,
But again,
like
yeah,
to give it back to the wire. We people, I think that's the irony of like the mob is that the irony between the mob and the street game for African American for Black people is that you're not given that much rope. you you
yeah.
can't be that damn wild. Like the only anomaly, like in the wire, the only thing that you could even juxtaposition you can make to that fair juxtaposition that you can make to a Joe Pesci's character in either Casino, Goodfellas, to the wire will probably be like Omar. Like these
Yeah.
guys outlived what they normally would have, the time that they normally would have outlived, and in the streets because they were just cowboys for lack of better terms. I
But
mean,
yeah, well, in the with the Italians, you have the whole thing about being a made guy or not. So that it provided they provided a structure for themselves where
to,
if you
to
reach a certain point, or if and it also was an exclusionary thing too because you had to be full Sicilian, you had to be able to draw your history back to
uh,
Sicily and everything, whatever. But it was a way for them to let only certain people involved be able to have that rope. But
that is a
even
hell of a
then
lot of rope.
but even then, like you said, they reach a point where but it where even you lose out on the rope, and it goes to show how for Pesci's characters in particular, where how wild his characters were because
Fool,
he reached the end of the rope both times. Like
yeah, he hung himself. He would
yeah,
have hung himself about 3 or 4 times how much rope they give him. So it's just really ignorant. It's just really wild to see, that. I think what I was trying to make is just like the common themes, and what I think what why I think what just made that a better film for me is just that one. It was just it kept the core elements. That all the core elements was still there, but I think it's just the exposition of it was just done on a larger scale. And I
mm,
think it made it, and it really, like, in the difference between like Goodfellas, Hill's character, seemed to take up a lot of, I don't see, maybe take up a lot of the movie as the key narrative, and then you come to find out a lot of his narrative was off, to like even in like good Casino's character where De Niro's playing Frank Rothstein, there was a larger
Sam
narrative.
Rock.
Sam Rothstein, excuse me, Sam Rothstein. There was a larger narrative around him. He talked about all the other influencing factors that determined him to even have that power that he had, and effectively that power ended up getting taken away from him. And
Mm,
it really provided a larger. It didn't talk. I mean, what Casino did is it talked about the mob life. It talked about not only it talked about the gaming industry in Vegas. It talked about the mob life. It didn't just talk about one thing. Casino, I mean, Goodfellas just talked about the mob, and that was pretty much it. And but and I just like the fact
Yeah,
that
it did.
Casino was just
It didn't.
it,
Yeah, I see what you're
it
saying.
it's a larger worldview. Like 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 Goodfellas is Goodfellas to me is probably what Sopranos is with a rock soundtrack. Not saying that it wasn't an amazing movie for what it is for the for then, and it's not an amazing movie now because there's two scenes that Scorsese does both in Goodfellas and both in Casino, and they're both very similar scenes. And that's what we spoke about earlier with the helicopter scene and Goodfellas. And he does the same scene in Casino, where he
Mm.
does it where they're changing the cars to meet out in the desert.
Okay,
And he
yeah,
uses the same, and he uses similar music. I think in he uses and I know songs because I listen to him a lot. Don't ask me why, but he uses "Jump Into the Fire" in Goodfellas, and then he uses a song called "Cream" in Casino, and he
okay,
just creates like this frenetic energy. It's like it's almost like having even if you're not in that experience, you almost feel the same level of adrenaline when if you listen watching the movie, you listen to the music at the same
yeah,
time, your adrenaline starts pumping. You're like, what the if you saw the movie for the first time and you see this going on, you're like, what the hell is going on?
yeah.
I mean,
He utilizes like soundtrack music, and he even familiar music like that. To a great degree in regards to setting that tone and that them setting the scene and making it more memorable.
yeah, yeah. So I think so from me, but I think those are the reason why one of those two resonate with me a lot. But like I said, I know if I'm like you end up watch, I think you end up watching because I end up watching Goodfellas more because I think Goodfellas is a little bit. You can correct me. I think Goodfellas is a little bit shorter.
It is shorter, yeah.
It is shorter, yeah. So I end up watching Goodfellas more because it's shorter. But if you're talking about what is the better movie compared to the two? If you watch what's it's done, I mean, Casino is just more it's just more of the there's just a lot more exposition. There's more of the world that exists, and they kind of more of the exposure to the world that exists.
Well,
So
I'm surprised in that. I think most people would probably, if you ask most people, they
no,
probably would put Goodfellas above Casino
I know.
if they had to pick, and I would include myself in that. But like I say, I love Casino too, and I think my pleasures, you know, from I have different sources of pleasure from both movies. In you explaining it, I could see why you would, knowing you and knowing your taste, why you would like Casino in that way, the way that you explained it, because the expository things that it provides, the sort the like I say the story, providing the backstories and the 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 way the way that it like I say it exposes a larger world around the crime and everything that's associated with the crime, but not necessarily of the crime. But like I said, I love both, but I probably
Yeah.
would put Goodfellas a little bit above Casino, but Casino is a great movie too. It is. So
Yeah.
but I didn't know that. I never knew that you liked that straight up more
Well,
than
it's more. Like I said, I think it's more because I've had the chance to. When you have the chance to compare them together, most of the
yeah,
times they don't have a chance to compare them together. Most of the times you don't watch them in close proximity to each other. You watch them. Maybe you watch one comes on TV, you watch it. The other one comes on TV, you watch it. I mean,
sure,
in many cases, Goodfellas is going to come on a lot more than a Casino is. And then, like I
yeah,
said, from a sake of brevity, or I guess or shortness, yeah, because Goodfellas is going to be the easier watch because it's shorter. But I mean, that being said, no, I mean from a cinematic standpoint, no, it's a just I guess I don't want to say it's a better done movie, but it's more I guess more appealing to the senses. I mean, it's bright colors. I mean, it's Vegas. I mean, even from like the use
that's what.
even the use of the music really was a lot more. it just seemed it kind of broke away from even the mold where he had traditionally would do it. Like he played the old in Goodfellas, he played the old Godfathers type music at the beginning, and then he'd end as the era came more to the 70s, and he I guess ended at the early 80s. He infused more of the rock music to kind of
Mm.
increase the pace of the tension of what was going on. But
And
like
you look
yeah.
at certain things as far as like his camera usage and just being more of a like the 80s movies were more on the ground
Hmm.
type, documentary type movies. If not sometimes he used some actual documentary like things like handheld cameras and stuff like that in Goodfellas, and then the movies going up, the going back to Raging Bull and stuff. But like where you say with Casino, by that time he's becoming much more of a stylistic director, and
Yeah.
a part of that too happened with the Age of Innocence movie that he released in between that, where
Mm.
that was a complete period piece in the 1880s. So
Right.
we talk about Scorsese making a leap and doing something different. He really did something different between because he did Cape Fear in between too, right? So
He did Cape
he did
Fear and
Cape
he did
Fear,
Age Innocence. Yeah.
which was more stylistic, but then he does a complete 180, you could say, with Age of Innocence.
Yeah.
And then I think Casino was his next movie after Age of Innocence, I think. And
And
then
then
he does after Casino, I think he did the Kundun movie.
the Kundun movie, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mentioned. And
And
then
then,
he does
then
another one of my favorites, which is
right,
Bringing Out the Dead.
Bringing Out the Dead. I know you love that. And so
Yeah.
he at that by the late 90s, he's really becoming almost experimental again in a way where he's just like every movie he puts out is sort of different in a lot of ways, and
We,
he's starting to tell different stories too, was beyond what he was beyond the bread and butter that he was known for in the 70s and 80s.
well, yeah, but we're also working with he's also working off a different material. So it
But yeah, like I
also
say, he's telling
yeah.
different stories. Yeah,
Well, yeah, no, but the point that I was trying to make here is that with the mob movies, of course, he's working with Nicholas Pileggi. I don't know who. I mean, with Age of Innocence, I don't know if it's Jane Austen. Cape Fear is
yeah, but yeah,
Cape
I,
Fear is the original. I mean, based off the original that came out 30 years before it. Kundun, I have no idea. Bringing Out the Dead was Michael Connolly's book, I believe.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
Edith Wharton wrote Age of Innocence.
Edith Wharton. Okay, Edith Wharton wrote it. Yeah, so Edith Wharton wrote it. But yeah, so and then like I said, by the time he got to Bringing Out the Dead, he's working with Michael Connolly. Um, I'm pretty sure he worked, and he when he made that movie, he used the film style that was kind of prevalent at that time, which is like the dark film that Spike was doing.
Oh
This,
yeah, the sort of the Malik Saeed sort of cinematography.
right.
Yeah,
And the reason why I like the movie more than anything, even though it was really well cast. Two, it showed Black and Latino people as human beings and not just
yeah.
like
That's definitely one of his more diverse movies. Yeah,
yeah, it's props. I mean, yeah, it's not his. Yeah, it doesn't deal with the mob. I think he didn't. He managed not to use the N word one time in the whole movie. Um, I think and he showed a modern New York, and that's his first movie where he showed a modern New York. For you to be a New York director, and it's his first movie in a long time, maybe as outside of Taxi Driver in the '70s, where he like really showed a modern New York.
yeah.
Because
Well, I think after again because I haven't I don't think either one's seen After Hours. I think that was modern in New York too, but
during
that's
that,
'85, so that's still a ways
yes,
from.
you
Yeah,
got 15 years in between that. You almost got 15 years in between that and Bringing Out the Dead. So
yeah,
he's showing modern New York during that time. So it's
yeah.
just, if anything, I think that his growth, if anything, the '90s probably is the period that for me that resonates the most. I mean, outside of that, you got two movies where you got Raging Bull and then you've got Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver.
because Mean Streets to me was boring as hell. I try to watch it. Shit's boring. I mean, like it's like
It's sort of I could say I would use maybe a kind of word, maybe rudimentary, but I still think for him at that time as a filmmaker, and it's a good movie. I would say it doesn't reach the heights that he would reach, but I think it was good for what it was at that time.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess the thing for me is that I think there were movies like I think the thing is that we have to remember when the 70s is that they were like high tension movies. And
Mm.
like so I kind of take that with kind of grain of salt because like I said, right around the same time, a year or two later, Dog Day Afternoon comes out. And if you talk about a tense ass movie, that's a tense movie
But
to
yeah,
watch.
but Lumet was a more accomplished director at that time, and he probably I'm sure he had more money on that production than Scorsese had
Yeah,
with B Streets. But yeah, I feel what you're saying though. It was
it didn't feel that high budget. I could be wrong, but it didn't feel like Dog Day didn't feel like a high budget film.
well, no, it doesn't feel like it, but I think that's part of again Sidney Lumet's ability as a director. But yeah, you look at I think those crowd scenes and stuff like that. I think there was a lot. But I just from the shooting, the camera and stuff, the quality of the of the film and stuff, you could see there was more money in one than the other.
Got it. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it felt. But the thing with like Mean Streets, it just felt like one. I mean, it was dated. I mean, it felt dated in '73. Like the New York, I'm sure like New York at '73, and we've kind of talked about this before, but like New York was on like it's on the other edge. Like a lot of the institutions that even in Little Italy where the movie was filmed,
yeah.
those were changing at that time. Like
Yeah,
New York, yeah,
it was changing kind of rapidly too. So I mean,
yeah.
he was depicting more of that. Yeah, probably 10 to 15 years before that.
The
Of
the early
yeah,
'60s, the early '60s New York, and like this, yeah, the romanticized, yeah. So I mean, that one didn't really resonate with me. And then 3 years later, he makes a movie about what New York really looked like, and a lot of concerns people in New York had at
that's
that
when
time.
that's when he hit his groove with
Right,
Texas. Yeah.
yeah, when he made Taxi Driver, and he was working with Paul Schrader on that one. Matter of fact, then I think Paul Schrader did help di wrote or helped write or helped direct Bringing Out the
Bringing out
Dead.
I believe, yeah, I believe you're
Yeah,
right.
which
Yeah.
kind of makes a sense where like the maybe why it was shot the way it was shot and kind of where it has some same thematic feels to it. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, yeah, like for up until Goodfellas, he did two movies that I just be like that are in my canon. So, and and that's so for him, that's that almost sound like Jay-Z dissing Nas, but I'm like that's a
But yeah,
you had
it's a
seven
little bit
one
off.
year.
Yeah, it's a little bit off, like Jay-Z, like that particular disc. It's
Right.
more. It's like you could believe it, but it's not exactly true. But
No, it's not true, but but are there two of the but are the two movies from his career that resonated with me? They it was Taxi Driver and it was Raging Bull, and that was or like those are the two movies that just you know s- stick with me. And then
you're not mentioning Goodfellas though, Dave,
well,
you
no, I
just
still
said
said
that, and you
well,
just
no,
said
that's what
that yesterday was better than Goodfellas.
no, so no, but you didn't miss, but you kind of missing my point. So
And
my
Schrader
point is
did do the screenplay for Bring It Out the Dude.
Brandon Dead. But what I meant between like 1970, so between 1970 and between 1990 is the point that I was trying to make is that you had like
Oh,
those were
between okay.
between 70. No, yeah, no. His filmography post 1990 would has some ups and downs, but it didn't have as nowhere near as many ups and downs for the previous 20 years. Is the point
Sure.
that I was trying to make. Like I said, you had him, yeah, like there was like outside of like Age of Innocence and Kundu, and you can argue those aren't necessarily bad films. Those are just out of genre films for him.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to make a judgment or assessment of those films, right? So, but everything else from like 1990, you got there are movies I can watch. I can watch The Aviator. I can watch The Aviator. I can watch
Okay,
Shutter
see,
Island.
that's why I was because so we about to wrap up. So
Yeah.
that's why I was going to ask you straight up, like, let's cut it off from 2000 now. Let's cut off from Bringing Out the Dead and
Yeah.
on. Right? What do you say are his most essential films since then?
Departed. I mean, Departed, The Wolf of Wall Street.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Departed and The Wolf of Wall Street. And even though he didn't direct it, I mean, he had a hand in it. That's Uncut Gems, and that's the reason why probably the Safety Brothers did that review him, because that's a Scorsese movie.
They're
It's a
his sons.
Yeah, I mean, they're his Jewish sons. That's a Scorsese movie. Yeah, it's a Scorsese movie without Scorsese doing it. It's a
Yeah.
movie I wish he did outside, or had it more of a hand in outside of The Irishman, because like I said, The Irishman is his ode to Godfather. It's just long, it's meditative, and then also what makes it even more problematic outside of the CGI is the fact that Frank Sheeran was, to your point, he's like the mob's version of Forrest Gump. So
Yeah,
it's
he never
not very
made up the
believable.
whole thing.
Yeah, like like, I'm at the Vincent Gallo killing, I'm at Appalachian, I'm at Senate hearings. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm everywhere. It's like if you got a friend. It's like if you had a friend and he told you he was at this part when this person got shot,
Yeah,
when this person got in a
every
fight.
time something pop off on the block, he there. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like, so Frank Sheeran was that guy. He was there sometimes somebody pops up in the block. He's like, I saw somebody that got shot. He's like, I thought you was in jail at the time. Well, yeah, I got released early. I'm like, you know, that's
yeah,
not. Yeah, that's the whole thing of it. So so it's an expensive investment in the movie for a long meandering film for something that's predicated based on a lot of man was trying to make himself like he was the Iceman, Richard
yeah,
Kuklinski,
Kuklinski, yeah.
and he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't that guy by everybody's accounts.
Yeah,
People,
to borrow another Jay-Z line, you need more people.
yeah, we don't. Yeah,
Don't
you
believe me.
can't believe. It's probably why that book wouldn't come out to put it posthumously, because they couldn't call him out. You did. I can't call you out on the lie now,
Mm-hmm.
because I think he died around the time or shortly after the book came out.
Right. I
Yeah.
think in the end that movie was simply made to do the whole like I said, he saw a chance to do a movie with all those guys in it that he's done this work with, and Pacino, who he never worked with before, and then and Netflix gave him the bag, and that was it. I don't think they were really too worried about about the being able to prove those stories. They just saw the story that could be told.
It's just a shame, because if he wanted to do something, like there's enough, it's like there was enough characters. If he ran out of, just say he ran out of people to do stuff about in New York, there's enough people in Chicago for him to do about. There was
Sure.
until recent decades, there was a Chicago mob, and it was based in the west suburbs, right?
Yeah, the
That's
outfit.
where,
Yeah,
yeah, the outfit. That's where Spilotro was a part of, or involved with.
yeah,
Like,
and Casino. Yeah, that's They were.
right. So I was
Yeah.
like, do a story based upon that. That'd have been a great story. There's like great
I'm
stories about
surprised nobody.
Joey the Count, Bonanno. There was a guy. I mean, there was a guy recently who got. I guess they had guys who've been put in jail in the last 10, 15 years that were based in Cicero and what the hell is it, Berwyn. I'm like, I
Yeah,
was like, you could like do a story upon that. Like, you ain't got to go make up a story. I don't know, for some Irishman. I'm like, you already did a good movie based upon the Irishman, and what's his name's character who just died not too long
Jimmy.
ago,
Yeah, and
and Departed.
Jim. Yeah, the man in Boston, my man in Boston. Yeah, I know you're talking
Yeah, I'm like, you could have Whitey Bulger.
about. Mighty Bulgy. Yeah.
Whitey Bulger. So you could have done a better, like the Johnny Depp story was weak sauce. You could have did a better
Black man.
version.
Yeah, that
You
was.
could have done a better story. Like, yeah, you could have did a better version of that. And I'm like, he just died not too damn long. Did he die? I don't know if he did. It just wasn't that damn. He just
Yeah,
died
bro.
not
Yeah,
too.
he's dead now.
Yeah, he just died not too damn long ago. You could have you could have done a story based upon that, because of Bulger being on the run, because he had been on the run for like 20 plus damn years. He's living out here in Santa Monica. You could have did a damn story on that.
Somebody's gonna make that movie eventually. I don't know if it's gonna be Scorsese. Probably not, but Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
There's a lot of story there.
the Chicago,
Both
yeah, you could, yeah, the
and
bulge, yeah.
outfit. Like I said, I'm surprised nobody has really done a big movie like that on the Chicago mob,
That I mean, like that, yeah, that
like
would
the
like
modern Chicago mob. Yeah.
that. Well, yeah, that would have been a that I like that would have been a great story. I mean, because the thing is, like, there was the remnants of them up until the last damn decade. Like
Hmm.
there's a guy.
Yeah.
What's his name? There was like there was a guy named, I think this guy named Fat Ass. They just put in jail not too long ago. That was a part
Yeah.
of the Cicero mob. This is like you could have been doing stuff, Joey the Cloud Banana, like, and all these guys are dead now, but you've had ample time to do, to do stuff on them. Now you can't. Now you just got to go based upon books. But I think for him, it's easier to like piggyback off. Like it doesn't take a whole lot to piggyback off and work with a. You're already working with established content. You're
Yeah.
already
Right.
working with a book. It
Right.
don't take a whole lot
That
to make a
played.
movie off
I
a
was
book.
thinking too. That played a big role in it. The fact that you had the book right there, ready to be optioned already.
And Pelegi right there is like, hey,
Yeah.
write this shit for me. I'm gonna direct it.
Yeah.
I mean, like that. I mean, I not to say that that takes anything away from him, but it does mean that it does seem like a little bit of laziness when one you got a screenwriter is like, okay, when somebody spoon feeding you some stuff like that or project, it makes it easier, and you already got a budget for it. Now you doing the shooting shit, and you got
Well,
the crew.
it's a formula that work that he probably it's a formula, like I say, going back to Goodfellas and projects like that where he knows it works. There's also probably when you talk about the studios, like being Netflix or the regular studios that he may have pitched to before then. It's like they probably felt more comfortable with a project that had a book tied to it that was I don't know if it was a bestseller or not, but
Well,
that had something like that attached to it that they
Well, there's a book, but there's plenty of books attached to the Chicago mob that exist. I think the issue at hand is that,
yeah, I mean, yeah, but
he probably
I don't
had
know
the
if there's a big
buy-in.
blockbuster selling book like that though. But like, is there like a book that of course you could take a lot of books and option them but again it's about like what books are being marketed. With a book that a popular book is going to have way more of a chance to be made than a not so popular book.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it's a lot easier. Well, one, he's fucking Martin Scorsese. Like he's made. I'm like, he can make to
But
early in his career.
he's also going to be more likely to hear about a popular book. It's not like I'm sure he looks for things that he can work on, but if sometimes he got to be. I think he was put on to the Irishman book. I don't think he knew
Well,
about
no,
it.
yeah, but
Like
yeah.
naturally, somebody had to put him on to that book for him to even notice it.
Well, yeah, but I know it's a project he was trying to get done for a while. But I guess what I'm saying is that when you have somebody like you got Pelegi right there saying, "Yeah, let's do this shit," I'm
Yeah,
sure it just makes it easier. Is the point?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. It's just you don't have to do any work. Like I mean that's the point I'm trying to make. But as far as like control, or being able to to make whatever the hell you want to make. I mean, if anybody could do it, it's him. I mean, like somebody like a lesser
Sure.
known director was trying to pitch The Irishman to a Netflix. I don't know if it would have the point. I don't know if it would have happened as easily as the point, or if they would have got a ginormous ass budget that he got. So the
No,
point is
not
that
at all, Jay. I'm saying the process of him being impassioned about the project in the first place, to where he was willing to pitch it to these other places. It starts with him being put on to something that may have, like I said, however he got put on to it. It was, it just wasn't there for a book about anything else. It was there for that book. That process was there for that book. It would, unfortunately, and the thing about Sheeran though is that him being possibly Fugazi, that that feeds into the marketability of the story. The fact that that it might not be true. That helped make that book more.
Too bad his ass ain't still alive. I don't know, or I don't know who wrote the book. I'm assuming he's still alive. Get his ass on Oprah, and Oprah could call him out on
But yeah, like
it.
he did, old boy who did the
James
yeah,
Frey,
James
yeah,
Gray. Yeah,
yeah,
right. You know,
yeah. I
that,
mean, it's just the thing is like I don't know. I mean, I guess the irony is like when you become I guess the other part of the criticism is if you don't like it, make something better. Hell,
yeah,
I'd love to be I'd love to be the black guy make a mob movie in Chicago. Shit gonna get made, probably not. The
at
irony
least
of it is that some of those you could still like the federal prosecutors and shit like that. You could still interview them. That's who somebody who should probably do it is what's his name, Brian Schoendorf. That's
oh yeah.
somebody who'd be good to do it and do it like do a documentary style and interview the prosecutors on it and interview the prosecutors, and for any of the guys that are still alive, the majority of them are dead or dying off
Yeah.
right now, and interview them and figure and see what they're you know
Hey, I
okay,
mean, look,
yeah.
maybe we should just write that script, man. If anything, we could sell it off to someone with an I or an O at the end of their name, and
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we could. We can get that. What was that guy's name? Who was tagging on Schoendorf's post? We can get him to play in the shit. Um,
but the right wing dude,
yeah, we get him to play. He's Italian. Get him to play. You can get him to play
he is
the.
okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. So yeah, you get him to play in the film. But yeah, I mean,
He ain't got no problem being around places where people shooting.
So, well, he ain't got no problem being in something salacious, and so he shouldn't have any problem something that's not painting Italian Americans in a negative light because he he shows the worst of us.
Sure.
So but no, it's really just ironic. It's like every time something focuses on the mob, it ends up in like New York, and I'm like, that's some lazy man shit. The mob exists in other markets. It did like it touched on it a little bit in Casino, but yeah, it existed in Kansas
Yeah.
City. It existed in New Orleans. It exists in Chicago. It exists in Vegas. It existed in certain parts in California. It exists in other markets, and all you lazy has to do is do New York all the damn time. And it's like, Jesus Christ, another mob. It's like doing a movie about the Irish mob. Like the Irish mob is the only place that existed was in Boston or
In
something like that.
Boston.
Like it didn't
Yeah.
exist anywhere else. Or like the Italian mob,
That's,
like
well, I would say
yeah,
that was cool. Going back to Casino, that was cool about them showing more of the network of the mob network with the other cities and stuff. And like it was funny how old boy brought them all down to Kansas City about running his mouth like that. That was a funny part. But
oh yeah, no, yeah, but it's just
yeah,
like
but it you could argue though too, like in the Irishman, that sort of branched out a little bit by because it's really centered with the Philly mob
the Philly,
and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, so and that's a crazy town too.
The Philly mob, yeah, and that's the point. Yeah, the Philly mob, but yeah, it ended up getting worse. But like the irony is that the time where it was really bad was like in the 70s and 80s.
80s, yeah.
Yeah, that's when it was like really bad. And those are the things that people don't even like. If I was gonna do a story, like if I was Scorsese, if you could take the old Scorsese, you would do a story on the Philly mob in like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
Because it was worse.
when they was warring with each other and stuff. Yeah,
You right, because that was the time when it was just like when things were really, were crazy. I'm like, he shows everybody going to jail by the 1970s, 80s, and like Goodfellas and things like that. But like things were still crazy, like in those less like what is it called, the less sophisticated markets, so to speak.
mm-hmm.
The places where the mob were less sophisticated, where they were more like old world, for lack of a better term. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's where the action was happening. I mean, it's just really that's really interesting too. Is that you don't have a whole lot of movies about Philly and just the underclass and all that exists there, because that's an
Oh
untapped
yeah, there's a
town.
lot. Yeah, like Italians, blacks, like all the like the black mob in Philly was crazy.
Yeah.
The Muslims,
Yeah, the black one, yeah, Monster,
yeah,
yeah, that, yeah. I mean, you have all, and it's really interesting. Like, and no one really touches on that. Like, Philly seems like this kind of like bastard step cousin of like the East Coast. It's East Coast, but it doesn't really get the same attention that New York, New Jersey does. You
yeah.
know, Connecticut, it doesn't get the same attention. You know,
Mm.
than as those are. And then every time you see something happen in Philly, it's bad. You know, yeah, but I didn't mean to go off on that. But what were we going to try to do something real quick on Steve McQueen or?
Now let's just wrap it up at this point. You know,
Okay.
we've done our own little epic episode here, man.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, we spoke a little bit on McQueen. I think we could bring him up because I still got to see those small acts film
yeah.
myself. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
check them
watch.
out.
Yeah, please, yeah, watch them and let me know what your
Yeah,
thoughts on that. But yeah, they're all. The only reason why I binged them is because they're all well done, and I mean they all present like authentic, Afro Caribbean life in London at different periods
and
in time.
you know what? That's been on my mind too. The whole diasporic thing in England and in Europe and in England in particular, because I think we talked a little bit about. Cause I think you watched some of this too. That the Michaela Cole show.
That show's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I may destroy you. I look. I
Yeah.
think if we do some talk about TV this year at the end of, if we do some wrap up on TV, that's something I'm gonna bring up because
Hmm.
it was one of the more compelling shows for me this year.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a but the thing about Michaela and some other people, what they're doing, like there's an interesting class and not yeah, classes, you can say class, but community of creators, of black creators, that and actors, actresses, writers, directors that are in England, in the UK, I should say. And you know, they're doing different things. Whether you, like I said, when you're talking about Michaela Cole and what she's doing on TV, or McQueen as a filmmaker, or different actors and actresses who emerged there, of course, throughout the years, Idris Elba, a lot of actors and actresses who black people may think are American
Our,
are
our
actually British.
British. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so it's fun. Like Letitia Wright, Shuri on Black Panther. I'm sure you put her in front of 9 out of 10 black people, they'd be like they'd be surprised to see that she's English. And
Yeah. Or yeah, I mean, we talked about that before. It's just kind of like the bias of like British actors over American-born actors. Um, but yeah, I mean, no, what's going on? Like London with TV and film, they've always been a lot more ahead of the curve than us. I
yeah,
mean,
they've long put out stuff that's worth watching. I do have a quite a fondness for British TV myself, but it's something that not everybody really is up on it like that.
no, I mean, I just I like anywhere. I like TV and culture anywhere where you can kind of be yourself, and you don't have to necessarily hide who you are. And
Mm,
historically, you know, England is one of those places. It's not where it's like
mm,
being, black and being dark skinned, or, being African. You're not pigeonholed. You're not pigeonholed. You're not, and there's large communities there that exist like that, and
yeah,
they don't necessarily live. There's not the necessity to assimilate is different. And I was talking
yeah,
to a friend of mine who's originally from Canada, from Vancouver, about that, and I was like, the great thing for Canada over America is like you don't have to assimilate. You can be whoever the hell it is you can't, whatever country you came from, still have a strong community there, and not really feel the need to assimilate.
yeah.
And like only, yeah,
That's good. That's a good point. There's a certain authenticity that, because the communities are so tight, like say those communities that those particular communities that they're formed, the Africans or the Jamaican community, like they
Pakistani
back
community, yeah, all of them.
the East Indians and all that. Yeah, they could. they keep quite a bit about themselves in the UK, where we everything sort of just well,
Whitewashed. I
it
mean, what you
whitewash.
homogenized. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
yeah.
and you can argue blackwash too in a way, because I
Oh
think
yeah.
a lot of people sort of go to this whole this stereotypical black thing that we do here too in America. So yeah, if it's not white, it's a whitewash definitely, but there's a
Blackwash. Yeah.
blackwash too that happens for a lot of people. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, for people who West Indian or African descent, yeah, they get put in the blackwash category. Definitely because or faces because the need to assimilate when you're in communities where people don't look like you or don't have shared experience and you want to belong, you adapt to it. And or you try to adapt to it so you can have a sense of belonging. I mean, so but the thing, like I said, that I love about London, and even when I'm there, it was there, it's just that there are communities there that have been there 40, 50, or 50, 60 years at this point, and they have not felt the need to assimilate. It's
Mm.
actually kind of like the opposite. Like,
Yeah.
the inner city, in a lot of cases, is brown, it's black, and you have to go to the outer boroughs to really get to what traditional England looks like.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's really, and there's exceptions to that rule too, because it's a small place. So of course there are a lot of areas that are expensive and it just black and brown people get priced out. But there are also like communities. There's Brixton, Whitechapel. There's those areas too that just have historically, black and brown people, and they've been there for a long time. And they don't assimilate. Their culture is based upon wherever they got off the boat, for lack of a better term. So.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you was able to get over there and see some of that, man. I anticipate having a chance to do that at some point myself too. I'm really fascinated in those communities, and I definitely would like to see them up close myself at some point. But yeah, we'll get. I I think it'll be good to try to get on somebody who could speak to that. Be it someone who's lived over there or is from there, or yeah, maybe that's something we could look into in on a future show, man.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
that definitely will work.
yeah. But yeah, let's
Mhm.
wrap it up for now, man. Thanks, brother, for sitting down as always. Again, man, we almost did 3 hours and no interruptions, man. That's something, man.
Yeah, that is. Yeah,
Yeah.
running with no brakes.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, that's really really a raw and uncut you can get from us, as far as just a conversation that me and Dave could have on quite a few things, but definitely movies and creators and stuff like that we admire and take up interest in, But yeah, that was fun, man. But we gonna try to come back on sooner than later next week, maybe Tuesday. I think we got one guest lined up, and we may have another guest lined up. I'll let you in on that off
Okay.
off air. But
Good.
yeah, we gonna try to come back, and like I said, we gonna start doing like some year in review type segments and stuff with some folks and talk about uh some of the different things that we typically talk about on here, hip hop, culture, politics, just the stuff that really made us talk in 2020. And it was a year unlike any other, but we just gonna try to see past it in a way, and then contextualize it, and wrap it up in a bow as best we can, so we can send that bitch out
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
move on.
yeah.
But yeah, that's it for now though. In the building, episode 15, our grandest one yet. If you could take it in all at once, I would, I'd admire you if
You can title it The Irishman.
I got the title at the movie. I just put at the movie, sort of a plain title. But I made AKA the Irishman.
Or you can call it
The Irishman redo.
the Irishman and the Godfather redo.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, long and contemplative. But
there you go.
yeah. All right, but thanks, man. Have a good one, man. And yeah, we'll talk again soon.
All right, same here. Thanks, man.
All right.
All right, peace.
Peace out, everyone. That's it for now. We are RegalRadio.com. War on Anchor. We out.